Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of What If Naruto Had Political Marriage with Temari. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 9. Thinking About You. It had been a few days since their first date and so far things were going well with the two soon-to-be married couple. Sure, there were the few things like how sometimes they had to race to get to the good bathroom, Temari telling him that he should stop throwing things around at random places and putting them away properly. Naruto also didn't like how she had so many products out on the sink all the time, and also how she didn't let him eat enough ramen. But even with the small issues they managed to get through them. After all, life wasn't perfect. With the team training and going out on a simple dinner date, things between them were slowly growing. At the moment they were in their backyard as she was helping him with wind training. Both were sitting down as he had a rock between his hands, trying as hard as he could to cut it in two. It just wasn't that easy. The rock was pretty solid and he was finding it difficult to keep his wind element stable. Ah, damn it! Naruto yelled out as he lost his concentration again. Temari sighed. She wished that Naruto would learn some patience. The boy kept expecting to get everything done right on the first try. Naruto, how many times have I told you to relax? You can't just keep going at it without thinking or concentrating. I'm trying. Naruto snapped out, glaring at the rock in his hands. Don't snap at me, mister, just because you're frustrated, Temari said, slightly angry. Naruto sighed and nodded. Sorry, I didn't mean it, but it's just so hard. I mean, how come I did shadow clones in one night and the Rasengan in a month but not get anywhere with this? Well, first off, Temari started to explain. From what Kakashi said, you're unique when it comes to shadow clones. Even I haven't even tried to learn that one yet. Now as for Rasengan, well, maybe you're more talented with shape manipulation, plus this isn't supposed to be easy anyway. Temari got up and got behind him and laid her hands on his shoulders. She felt him tense up in surprise at the contact. Just relax, okay? You can't do this if you're all tense. Naruto swallowed as he tried to calm his mind, but it was kind of hard to do at the moment. He tried not to think of her hands and how light their touch was against him, or that fact he could smell the scent of her hair as she was this close to him. A girl had never been this close to him and he was a little nervous about it, but he tried to push that aside and think of wind chakra. She had explained how it was supposed to feel and the shape he was supposed to have in his mind about it. As his mind was wondering, he heard a small crack and looked startled at his hands. He saw a small crack had formed in the rock and he got a huge smile on his face. Hey, look, I did it! Naruto said, showing her the rock. You cracked it. It's a step in the right direction, but don't get cocky yet, she told him with a smirk. She straightened up, stretching out her back. I think I'll go in and relax in some nice hot water. Okay. I'll want to keep at this for a bit longer. Naruto smiled as he went back to his work. Temari wasn't surprised. Naruto trained to the point that went beyond what a normal person would do. In fact, she was actually starting to push herself as well. His attitude seemed to be a bit infectious with her, plus she didn't want to be left behind either. As she went into the house, Naruto looked at his rock and kept on trying to picture how wind-natured chakra was supposed to be and feel it out. He wanted to cut the rock in half soon so he could start learning all kinds of kick-ass wind elemental jutsus. He lost track of how long he was into his training, but so far he couldn't get the hang of it. He tried to relax, but each time he failed at getting the results, the more frustrated he got. After a while he took a break as he glared at the rock. It was like it was mocking him, but he would show it who was boss. So how have you been, kid? Naruto jumped and turned around to see Jiraiya standing behind him. Naruto hadn't seen the old pervert in a while and smiled a bit seeing him. Things are going good, Ero Sennin, Naruto said. The toad sage scowled a bit. Damn it, how many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that? Naruto just ignored it and held up his rock. Look, I managed to get it to crack. A bit more training and I'll be able to learn all kinds of kick-ass moves. Jiraiya stood closer as he looked at the rock. It wasn't much for progress, but for a boy his age to be learning to do elemental training after shape training was impressive. But he also didn't want to give the kid a swelled head. The boy already had problems with that and he needed to learn to keep that in check. Not bad, but you still got a lot of work ahead of you. He could see Naruto looked a bit disappointed. So then how are things going with that Suna girl? Anything interesting? Naruto was surprised by the sudden change in topic as he scratched the back of his head. Well, Tsunade Bachan wants me to take her on dates to get to know her more. Jiraiya chuckled a bit, he never knew his old teammate liked to play matchmaker. So how have you been doing on that front? Naruto blushed a bit as he went through the dates they had so far. He talked about the first one on top of the Hokage monument. Naruto thought back to that date and he had to admit that she was pretty that day, and he also remembered how she walked up those steps, causing him to blush at the memory. When he was talking about the others, he suddenly heard perverted giggling and scratching noises. He turned to see Jiraiya was grinning as he was scribbling down notes. What the hell? Naruto yelled at him. Hey, don't stop now, Jiraiya said as he kept on making notes. This is good stuff, kid. I didn't know you had it in you. You keep this up and I think I'll make my next book on this. Ah, I can see it now. Ika Ika Princess, the story of a boy trying to win the heart of an exotic princess from another land to prevent a war. It will have action, adventure, romance, and it could be my next big seller. You're not making one of your perverted books about me and Temari. Naruto yelled as he tried to grab the notes. Come on, kid, I'll cut you in for a percentage then, he told the boy as he tried to keep his notes. Give me that, Naruto yelled out. Inside, Temari was enjoying the hot water. The way it soothed her made her wish that Suna had enough water to spare for something like this. Although this was their small personal onsen, she didn't dare go in naked. She had bought a small bathing suit to use when she was in here. Besides, what if company came over, or what if Naruto walked in on her? That incident with the shower had been embarrassing enough. She blushed remembering that moment. Sure, they were going to be married, but that didn't mean she was ready to have any man see her naked just yet. She took the time to relax and think on things. So far it wasn't so bad how things were going in her life. It was still strange and she knew she might never totally get used to living in this village, but it was getting better. Another thing she was thinking about was Naruto. The boy kept on surprising her. He wasn't all that bright at times, and yet he could do something insightful as well. In some areas he was weak, but in others he was so far ahead of everyone it just made no sense to her logical mind. Maybe that was why she was starting to find him so interesting. He was like a living puzzle, and everything she felt she was getting close to solving it. Naruto would do something that would change all of that. Another thing was that he treated her pretty well. She had been expecting when she heard of this whole arrangement to act the perfect housewife. A fate she would have hated and most likely had rather killed herself within the year, but he never once told her to do anything. He always asked her first. Plus apparently he had a thing about being put into place by strong female types. With how Sakura popped him on the head and how Tsunade threw something at his head for the few times she had seen when he just barged into her office and called her Bachan, Temari was starting to think the boy was a masochist. On the bright side, with all of that, she could control him when he got out of line. Although at times he could be a very stubborn person as well. Her mind went to their dates that they had, and she was surprised at how much she enjoyed her time with the boy. Temari had never had the chance for a dating life, but so far Naruto was making up for it. He tried so hard that it was very sweet as well. Damn it, Ero Sennin. Naruto's loud voice broke her out of her calming thoughts as she heard an argument going on outside. Her left eye twitched a bit at being disturbed. She gave a small growl of annoyance and picked up a towel and quickly dried herself off as she put it around her waist to go see what the problem was. She made it to the back door and moved it open, and there was Naruto wrestling with some old man over some kind of papers. What the hell is going on here? She demanded angrily. Naruto jumped in surprised, and Jiraiya took the opportunity to get back his previous notes. Naruto scowled at him as he started to answer Temari. Ero Sennin here was being a pervert again. He wanted to. He trailed off as he went to look at her. There was Temari, slightly wet, her hair still damp and hung down close to her face. She only had on a towel and a swimming top on that he could see. He blushed deeply as he had never seen her with so much skin showing. Jiraiya on the other hand noticed the boy's look and had to admit the girl was a lovely young thing. Pity she was too young for him. He slapped the boy on the back hard enough to cause the boy to fall forward. Nice catch, Gaki. You got a real winner with that one. What the hell is that supposed to mean and who the hell are you? Temari demanded. Allow me to introduce myself. Jiraiya got into his usual stance as he became the weird dance of his. I am the sage of Mount Myobokuzen, the toad hermit, the one that the ladies adore and swoon over his charm and power. I am one of the legendary three, I am Jiraiya the Sannin. Temari blinked a couple of times, then 4 times and then 5 more times before she said anything. You're supposed to be the Jiraiya, she said deadpanned. She just couldn't understand why the Leaf Village seemed to have the most bizarre collection of ninja in the entire world. That I am, my dear, and you must be the Temari girl that my new apprentice is going to marry. Jiraiya was already taking notes in his head to make the princess in his story a blonde with a fiery temper. Although many might confuse the character with another character of his, Ayane, which was based on Tsunade, well, nothing a little editing of the character couldn't fix. I am, Temari told him. So what's all this about? At that, Naruto snapped out of his daze seeing Temari in that state of dress and pointed accusingly at Jiraiya. He was going to make one of his perverted books about us and I was trying to stop him. His what? Temari glared at the man. Ero Sennin is the guy that writes those books that you see Kakashi-sensei reading, Naruto told her, crossing his arms over his chest. Temari got an angry tick on her eye as she glared at the old man. Jiraiya, after a lifetime of knowing Tsunade, had developed an instinct about angry women. He could already see that this girl shared a few of his teammates' attributes, although it was too bad that Tsunade's most visual appealing attributes weren't there for Naruto to enjoy, but the anger this woman had was just like Tsunade. Temari was coming to terms with marrying Naruto, leaving her village and living here, but having one of those perverted books written about her was crossing a line. There was no way she could hold her head up high if people found out about that, and her reputation could be ruined. Now she really wished she had her battle fan handy, as she had an urge to slam it into his skull. Got it! Naruto shouted as he managed to snag the notes from Jiraiya's hand while he was busy with Temari. Damn it! That could be my best work yet, you brat! Jiraiya yelled out as he started to chase Naruto around the yard. I don't think so. Naruto yelled out as he made his favorite hand seal, and suddenly a large amount of white smoke showed up. When it was gone, there were at least over a dozen Narutos as they ran off in different directions. Jiraiya cursed as he picked one out and started to chase it. They all left the backyard and Temari smirked as she had to admit, Naruto came up with a good plan, and was further impressed when a rock suddenly turned back into Naruto. He was grinning happily as he used his shadow clones to get rid of Jiraiya while he had turned into a rock. Temari came up behind him. Niece, that should keep him busy for a while. How long do your clones last anyway? Naruto wondered about it as he shrugged. I have no idea, usually I get rid of them or they hit something. Then he turned around and blushed as he was face to face with Temari, and given their difference in height he had a good view of her chest. His eyes were just drawn to the cleavage in front of him and he couldn't look away. Temari suddenly noticed what he was looking at and quickly crossed her arms. Hey, eyes up, she yelled, and Naruto took a step back. Sorry. I didn't meant to, Naruto said as both teens were blushing hugely. Hentai. Temari shouted as she started to chase Naruto around as he started to run from her. What they didn't know was that in one of the trees Jiraiya was watching them. He giggled as he was writing down on a spare notepad. If Naruto could think he could get one on him after years of being a pervert, the boy was in for a surprise. He let the boy think that he had grabbed the real notes and chased a clone just long enough to get out of sight. He couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the two, and his mind was reminded of a similar moment between Naruto's parents. Minato had accidentally crashed into Kushina and a hand had landed on a breast. That girl had chased the poor boy all over the village before she caught him. He giggled as he started to write down more scenes. He couldn't wait to get this book out. Elsewhere, Kakashi Hatake was having a hard time, although you would never know it from just looking at him. He was sitting in his small apartment trying to read his book, but he just kept on reading the same page over and over again. He eventually put it away as he sat up and sighed. He was both happy and not so happy with how things were turning out for his team. Temari was helping both Naruto and Sakura in ways he never expected. She was helping both with their taijutsu and he was helping out here and there as well with hints and improvements. Temari's training in Wind Elemental was going to help Naruto out a lot as well when he got the hang of it. Kakashi also managed to get a couple of water elemental jutsus for Sakura to start training in as he could help her out with that. The only major problem was Sasuke. The boy was being more withdrawn and his quest for power had only gotten worse since that curse mark. In fact, the boy's behavior had changed a lot since the Forest of Death and not in the good way. The boy had been coming along and if things had kept as they were he might have started to open up and changed for the best. But Orochimaru had ruined that and now the man was after the boy. Sasuke already was one of the strongest genin, knew 2 different elemental attacks which was something someone didn't learn until they made Jonin, but it still wasn't enough it would seem. He wanted to learn shape manipulation but he wanted Sasuke to learn other things before that. Like what it meant to be part of a team and that he didn't have to go through it all alone. Plus he had already spent a month training Sasuke and he needed to round out the team more before he could even consider that but Sasuke wasn't the patient type. Kakashi looked at the window and he saw the plant that Naruto had given him a while back. He smiled at how the boy had grown it himself and given it to him. Kakashi had gotten a book on plants to make sure he took care of it as well, as a present from students should be honored. He was glad that Temari was helping him out as the boy needed the extra help as his schooling was lacking in the academy. He was secretly glad when Naruto got Iruka as a teacher. Sakura he definitely needed to get that girl someone that could be a role model for her. She could become great if she was become more serious as a ninja and she could go far. Temari was already an impressive ninja but her weakness was her weakness in closer quarters so far. But then his mind ran back to Sasuke and how that seal was on him. That counter seal that he had put on Sasuke would only work with the power of that person's will but there were 2 facts that were also in play. The first being that he wasn't a seal master like the 4th of Jiraiya were, sure he knew more than most but he wasn't an expert. The other thing was that the curse seal was Orochimaru's personal design and no one other than him knew all that much about it. Maybe if he knew something more about it then he could help out more and make sure that Sasuke's mark was totally repressed, but the only person that knew anything was a missing nin that would not help out. Then he suddenly remembered that there was another person he could ask, that is if she wanted to. Kakashi got his vest and put it on, more out of habit than anything else, and jumped out his window and started his search. Hopefully she was still in the village and not on some mission. He knew a bit about the ninja in question but not much. He respected her skills and he had worked with her a few times in the past. Sure she was a bit eccentric but she wasn't all that bad, she just liked to have some fun. Unfortunately besides a few things and that she was close friends with Kurenai, there wasn't much he knew of the younger woman. It wasn't until an hour later when he felt like he would have to seek out Kurenai for information that he found his target. There she was coming out of a dango shop, eating the last of said treat. Anko had been having a nice relaxing break so far. Nothing major was going on with all the reconstruction going on. Thankfully her apartment had survived being crushed by a giant snake, the buildings next to hers not so much so she needed to get out when the construction started. There was just no way for her to sleep in or relax with all that racket going on, but at least she wasn't homeless like some of the more unfortunate ones. She had spent the day shopping for some new supplies, some food and looking for something interesting to wear as well. Hopefully there might be a mission soon as she was starting to get a little bored though, something to at least keep things interesting. Hello there Anko. She stopped at the smooth and relaxed voice behind her as she turned to see one, Kakashi Hatake behind her. She grinned seeing the man. He defiantly was looking to make things interesting as Kakashi was never boring. Plus he had that little firecracker on his team as well. So what is it? Anko asked him to the point. Kakashi gave an amused smile. Glad to see you too, but honestly I need your help with something that only you can do. Now Anko was smiling a bit more. What's the name, and do you want that person still breathing? Nothing like that, Kakashi told her and her shoulders slumped in disappointment. I need your help for a student of mine. Anko blinked and thought about it for a second. Oh, which one? Sasuke, Kakashi said in a more serious tone. Now Anko's mood took a bit of a darker turn. She knew all about what had happened in the Forest of Death between her old teacher and Sasuke and she knew his plans for the Uchiha. She suddenly felt a brief twitch where her own curse mark was on her neck. She shifted a little as her shoulder rolled, but Kakashi caught it. He nodded as he saw her eyes. Yeah, I need your help with his curse seal. I don't know enough about it and I'm afraid that the counter seal I put on isn't working that well. Counter seal? There's a counter and no one told me. Anko said a little more dangerously. Kakashi held up his hands in defense. I had to rush to put it on and I wasn't sure how well it would work. Plus he seemed to be having a hard time with it and I never seen you have any issues with yours, so I assumed it was fine. I'm also surprised that the third never mentioned it, as I did report it to him. Anko let a deep sigh go as she let her anger go as well. She knew better than that, and if there was a problem with the boys then it might not work well with her anyway. But still it stung a bit that the old man never told her that Kakashi was experimenting with a counter. Sure, her own seal didn't always activate, but she had to constantly be on guard if it ever did. And the few times it did react, it was painful and left her vulnerable like in the forest of death. Anko? Kakashi asked, seeing how she was. I'm fine, Anko said, looking up at him. If I help you with this, you think you can help me? Kakashi rubbed his chin. It might not be too much of a problem, although I might have to get someone else to put it on you, as I'm not sure you'll let me try anything what I used on Sasuke. Why is that? Anko demanded, her hands on her hips. The seal required Sasuke to have it painted on his upper body, his bare upper body. He clarified. Anko's face lit up in realization. Oh, yeah, thanks for the heads up, but trust me, I got nothing to be ashamed of, but thanks for the heads up. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, so then what do we do first? Kakashi was glad for her help, and who knew, maybe by studying her seal he could help her out as well. Chapter 10. Helping Hands. So, why are we walking to the Hokage's tower? Anko asked as she noticed where Kakashi was walking. She had agreed to help him since she figured it would be a nice way of sticking it to Orochimaru if she could foul up any plans he was making for the Uchiha boy. I need Tsunade-sama to see if she can find Jiraiya, Kakashi said to her. I'm good, but he's a true seal master after all. He taught the fourth many of his sealing techniques and knowledge, so having his help would be good. Anko nodded as that made sense to her, although once again she felt a small pang on why he wasn't called in for her. Then again she did remember Tsunade had been looking in on her when they had found her lost and confused. It was one of the reasons that Anko was glad that Tsunade was the new Hokage, as she had a huge respect for the woman. She had been a big help in Anko's recovery, and so Anko felt she owed the woman a lot. So what can you tell me about your seal? Kakashi asked as they kept on walking. Anything you can think of would be helpful. Anko sighed as she thought about anything she could think of. Well, it hurts like a bastard for me at times. Like when I was with Orochimaru in the forest, I could barely move. Did he start the seal, or do you think it was reacting to his presence? Anko hadn't thought which it was at the time. She was more focused on just trying to kill the bastard. She thought about all that he took from her. The uncertainty of what had happened to her plagued her for years, with all the missing holes in her memories. All the memories of when Orochimaru became her sensei were just gone, and it hurt a lot. Every day she wondered if there was a face in the crowd she had known, or had she any good memories buried up inside her mind. Every time she tried to think, it would hurt her, and then she only got angrier. Anko thought about her fight with Orochimaru and all that pain and anger, all that hatred built up in her. Anko winced as the mark on her neck throbbed. What is it? Kakashi asked her, helping her to steady herself. Just a flash of pain. I get them now and then. She told him, pushing him away when she could stand. She hated being seen as weak among others. Kakashi was silent a moment as he thought about something. What was it you were feeling? What was I feeling? Kakashi nodded. Please describe your emotions at that moment. Anko didn't know what he was getting at. I felt anger, a lot of it. I was remembering how I was feeling in my fight with Orochimaru, and then the pain started. Just anger. What do you want to hear? Anko asked, getting annoyed. Because you're a bit angry now and seem fine, so is there anything more than just anger? Hatred. I was feeling hatred, Anko told him. Kakashi nodded as if something was fitting into place. Tell me, is Orochimaru the only thing that you truly hate? Okay, what the hell are you getting at? Anko demanded. She wasn't liking all the questions. Sure, she agreed to help, but this was reminding her a bit too much like when she had been interrogated when she had been brought back to the village. She didn't like that time she had spent there in the dark cells as they were trying to see if she was a traitor or not. I think the seal reacts to very dark emotions, Kakashi started to tell her his theory. Hatred seems to be a key in activating it. If you truly hate the man, then the seal must have activated when it felt your hate growing. It sounds logical given what Sasuke's motivation is with his brother. Hatred for killing his clan and family, Enko said softly as it started to make sense to her as well. Orochimaru was just the sort of twisted person to make a seal that feed on negative emotions. Sure, she felt anger at times, but the seal never activated, and people say they hate something, but was that true hatred? She wanted to kill Orochimaru, she wanted to make him pay and for him to suffer like she had. Her hand went to her neck, feeling the spot where the seal was. It could be at least one of the keys to the seal, Kakashi said, breaking her out of her own thoughts. There might be other emotions that will trigger it, but that can be done for another time. However, do you sometimes feel this pain at other moments? Enko nodded her head. After certain bad dreams it hurts, not much but enough to be very annoying. Also, I think it does react to Orochimaru's presence. During the start of the fight I could feel it, but I could ignore it. It wasn't until later that it got too much for me. So heightened emotional states do affect it, and I'm not surprised that Orochimaru would cause it as well as he did give it to you. Kakashi told her. Great, so what does this mean? I got to control my emotions, like that would happen, Enko muttered to herself. She would be the first to admit that she was pretty much a free spirit. Sure, ninja weren't supposed to show emotions, but that just wasn't the type she was. In a serious mission she could control herself, she had that much discipline, but total control wasn't her. She cast a look to Kakashi, who always seemed to have so much control, and wondered how he was able to do it. Well, we'll just think a way around it then. Kakashi turned to her, and from how his eye was closed she could tell he was smiling at her. She nodded, although she wasn't sure how he would, but she felt a bit better otherwise. Later that day. It was late afternoon by the time Kakashi showed up. Even though he had a valid excuse, his genins, mainly Sakura and Naruto, hadn't believed about helping a fellow ninja out. He didn't go into details about what exactly he was doing, as he wasn't sure how Sasuke would react to him working on that seal of his again. The boy was becoming slightly worse, it seemed, and he was keeping a careful eye on him just in case. He had no idea what Sasuke was thinking or would do, but the path the boy was walking down worried him. Training went well for the most part. Sakura was coming along fine with her water manipulation. In fact, with her perfect chakra control she was getting the hang of it faster than Kakashi would have thought. All she lacked was the stamina and chakra supply. Sasuke was still slightly brooding, but he seemed preoccupied with something lately, but Kakashi couldn't tell with what. Naruto and Temari were proving to be forming good teamwork, most likely due to the living arrangements and the extra training she was helping him with. Since Kakashi was meeting up with Anko later on and hopefully Jiraiya, he had to make it a shorter day than normal. Sasuke went off as usual, but Sakura asked Temari if she could help her train a bit more. Temari didn't know much about the girl and figured since they were on the same team they might as well try to get to know each other more. So she told Naruto she would be home later. As Sakura trained with Temari, her respect for the older girl was growing. Although Temari used a fan mostly in battle, her hand-to-hand skills were better than Sakura's. She was coming along with the water jutsu that Kakashi had been teaching her, and she almost had it, but she lacked enough chakra to do it more than a few times. But she was improving. She used to only be able to do it 3 times, but lately she pushed it up to 5. Temari was another big help. The woman was helping her in taijutsu, and Sakura could notice some improvements. She learned a lot of things that they never taught at the academy. One thing she learned was when you punch with a hook to keep your elbow up, so if you miss with the fist you can get your elbow in next. You could also catch the brow of your opponent with that elbow, you can bust open the skin, making blood flow into the eye. After a while both of them were getting tired as Temari called for a break. Sakura was thankful as she felt like she was about to drop any second anyway. Both girls rested up against a tree, just enjoying the time to relax. You're getting better, Temari commented to the other girl. Really? I still feel like I need to go a lot further. Yeah, you're right. Temari said as Sakura seemed to deflate at that. But at the rate you're training it will take less time. What were you doing all that time anyway before now? I mean if you trained like this since you started the academy then you should be stronger. Oh. Well. Sakura bit her lip remembering how she had spent a lot of her free time trying to pursue Sasuke. Oh brother. Temari sighed. Don't tell me you were one of those girls chasing after the Uchiha boy. So instead of training that could help you and your team survive you chased after a boy, real smart. Well Sasuke is worth it. Sakura defended herself. Worth getting killed over. Temari snapped at her. This isn't a game. People will die on missions. I mean Naruto had to save your ass from my brother while your precious Uchiha couldn't do jack. Tell me, do you always need to be rescued in your missions or do anything? Sakura wanted to say she did a lot of things but she couldn't think of anything. Hell, she hadn't even thought it was Naruto who had rescued her at first. In fact, during the Forest of Death it had been Naruto that came out of nowhere to save them from Orochimaru. She had tried to take care of the boys when they were both taken out but she hadn't done much. Sure, she had set up traps and had done everything she could have done. She had fought her hardest. She had bled and got hurt bad to protect her teammates but she still had to be saved, this time by Lee. It was then that she realized she needed to be stronger to support her team instead of being a burden. Temari saw the girl's face. She knew that she was harsh but she was on this team now and the girl needed to face the facts. Look, at least you're trying to improve. I know you're right and I am trying, Sakura said weakly. It's just that I'm always watching their backs. Even Naruto, who was the dead last, is stronger than me now. Well, he's surprising, so don't feel too bad. Temari gave a small smile thinking back. First time I met him I didn't think much of him at all. Just an idiot with a very loud mouth and who wore too much orange. Sakura giggled at that. Yeah, you really should try to get him to wear something else at times. Temari rolled her eyes. Trust me, I've been trying. Somehow I don't think Naruto would be Naruto without some orange in his life. And being a little dense and loud. Sakura commented as Temari gave a small nod. He is surprising though. Temari sighed as she looked to the sky. He never gives up and he's actually kind of sweet at times. He cares a lot for his friends and those people that are precious to him. Sakura nodded, remembering all the things Naruto had done. She felt bad for being mean to him when they were at school together and now she was considering him to be a very good friend. When Ino and her had stopped being friends she had been very lonely and she felt bad for making Naruto feel the same. Maybe if she had known what she did now they could have at least been friends for each other. Well, I can fix that now at least, Sakura thought. So then, how are things going with you and Naruto? Sakura asked the older girl. Temari gave a small blush as she looked away. We're doing fine. He tried so hard on the dates, it's nice, but I keep telling him to just be himself. But he is a nice guy, but I don't know much about him. Was he always like this? Temari thought she might be able to get some more information about Naruto through Sakura. She knew little of his past and figured since she was a teammate she would know more. Sakura wasn't sure how to answer that at first. Well, I'm not sure. We were never really friends before now. How come? He seems like a decent guy, Temari asked confused. Well, mainly it was just that a lot of the kids didn't hang out with him. He used to pull all kinds of pranks and stuff and he would act out. I also heard a lot of parents telling their kids to stay away from him, but I never knew why. I heard kids asking their parents that same question, but I never heard a real answer. Temari got a small scowl on her face hearing that. Okay, what the hell is the deal with this? I've noticed people glaring my way at times, but lately it's also at him. At first I thought it was just because he was with me, but I keep hearing stuff like this. There is something going on here and I want to figure out what's going on. Whatever was going on, Temari wanted to figure out what was going on. With Naruto. Naruto was on his way home with his mind on things. He had to change his route as he found himself walking to his old apartment complex, and not for the first time. It would take some getting used to living in a new place, it would seem. But still, so far life was okay. The house was coming along and it was nice having someone with him all the time, and he felt that he and Temari were at least becoming nice friends. It was just nice waking up and having someone there. he hadn't realized just how empty his old apartment was. Sure, he had things, but until now he never knew what it was like having someone living with him. Naruto knew loneliness as he had been alone for most of his life, but looking back on his old life now made that time seem even darker than he thought. It was a depressing thought, but he quickly brightened as he thought of how he would never had to go back to that kind of life. His thoughts were suddenly ripped from him as he felt someone gripping his jumpsuit and pulled him to face them. He was surprised to see Ino was the one there. Ino. What the hell? So how are things going? Ino asked, grinning. With what? Ino scowled a little at him. What do you mean with what? With Temari, of course. Oh. Naruto blushed a bit as he scratched the back of his head. Things are going good, we've gone on a few dates so far and she seemed to enjoy herself. He didn't want to mention the whole thing with Jiraiya and how she had chased him around for a bit after she caught him staring at her breasts. But in his defense, how was he not to look? They were practically at eye level with him and she was wearing a two-piece at the time. So how has my advice been working out? Ino asked him. Have you gotten her any gifts or done something really nice for her? Well, a few things, but how many gifts do I do and what else should I do? Naruto asked her. He was willing to get any advice from anyone, well, maybe except for Jiraiya. He was still pissed about him trying to make one of his smut books about him and Temari. Well, there are several things you can do for a woman. Ino started to get into lecture mode with Naruto. Don't forget to compliment a woman at times. Things like hair, looks are important. If she got a new dress, then comment on it because it's nice to know if a guy notices these things. Plus, if she needs help, you should help her before she has to ask. That shows that you really do care. Naruto nodded his head as he tried to remember all of this. Another thing is how you look, Ino told him. Naruto frowned as she looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? Well, for one, you need to get rid of that hideous jumpsuit. Ino pointed at his beloved suit. I mean all that bright orange. I'm amazed you haven't gotten killed. It just screams out, here I am, come and kill me, to the enemy. But I like orange. Naruto whined. Ino sighed. Well, how about getting something with a little less? I mean, it's not exactly the kind of thing a ninja should wear. Naruto would have to think about it. He just loved orange, plus the jumpsuit was neat. It had a lot of pocket space and it was easy to repair and clean, not to mention it was cheap too. It was very comfortable as well, so he wore it all the time. But was it really that bad for a ninja? He thought about what others wore and not many wore bright colors all that much. In fact, even Sasuke had taken to wearing a new black outfit that he had to admit was better than the older one. Well, what would be better? Naruto asked as he never did have any real fashion sense. Ino grinned. How much money you got on you? Naruto blinked a few times as he pulled out Gama-chan, his frog wallet. With the new pay he was getting, he had a bit more money these days. Plus there was that he had saved up over his life as well back at the home, but he kept that for emergencies or if he really needed it. Ino took a quick look and nodded. Okay, looks like you got enough for at least a couple of things. A couple of things. Ino suddenly pulled him on his arm. Yeah, come on, I'm taking you shopping and helping you to pick out some decent clothing. Before he could even stop her, she was dragging him through the streets of Konoha. Uzumaki home. Temari got back feeling tired and her feet were killing her. She placed her battle fan against the wall by the front door and kicked off her footwear. She noticed that Naruto's shoes were there as well and he must be home. She went straight the couch and fell onto it with a groan. After a bit she rolled onto her back and just felt like going into the onsen or at least in a hot bath, but she couldn't even move at this point. Hey Temari, that you? Called Naruto from another room. Her later entered and saw her sprawled onto the couch. Man, you look like you and Sakura-chan must have went all out. Temari said dryly. God, I feel tired and my feet are killing me. Naruto thought back to some of the things Ino had talked about. Maybe I could help out. Temari looked at him for a moment. How? Well, I could. Naruto wasn't sure, the words just left his mouth without really thinking of what he could do. He had been hoping that she would know what he could do. He had to think of something and he tried to think of what he would want if his feet were hurting. I could give you a foot rub. Temari thought about it. She only got something like that from a spa, but it had been a very long time since she had gone to one of those. It would sound very nice at this moment as well. Alright, but don't try anything perverted. She warned him. I'm not Ero Senin, you know, Naruto said as he got to her feet. He wasn't sure what to do, so he started out gently with just rubbing them. Then he trailed his finger over her arch and she jumped with a yelp. Don't do that. Oh, why is that? Naruto asked her. Because it tickles, Temari said. Oh, it does it? Naruto grinned at her and Temari's eyes widened as she had seen that grin on his face during those pranks of theirs. Before she could pull her feet away, he grabbed one and started to tickle her sensitive areas of her feet. Temari tried to kick him, but she couldn't get a decent shot in with her one free leg, and then he suddenly managed to sit gently on her leg, pinning it. Now he could concentrate on tickling her foot, and soon Temari couldn't fight back anymore. She was laughing so hard she could barely say a word out. Give up? Naruto asked as he paused. You little bastard, she said, which only got him to start again. Okay, I give. Naruto chuckled as he released her feet and got a kick to his arm for it. That wasn't funny. It was for me, he grinned at her. You should laugh more, you know. You got a nice laugh. Temari was silent. No one had ever said that about her. Then again, she hadn't really laughed before she had met Naruto. He made her smile, even if it was just something stupid he was doing or from him actually trying to make her feel better. Naruto told her to put her feet back, but only after she made him promise not to tickle her feet again. It took Naruto a bit to see what would work and what didn't as he listened to what Temari told her, what was feeling nice or what hurt from too much pressure. After about a few minutes, Naruto figured out how to give her a good foot rub. Okay, that feels so good now, Temari sighed as she smiled as he rubbed her feet. Too bad you can't get my shoulders too. Sure I can, he said as he suddenly made a clone and told him to take over her feet. Temari had forgotten about that, and although it was something no boy had done to her before, she wasn't sure if she was ready for him to be that close to her in this kind of situation. But she was starting to trust him and her feet were feeling much better. One of the drawbacks to using her battle fan was the strain it put on her neck and shoulders area. How come your skin is soft? Naruto asked, confused as he felt her skin on her neck. I mean, aren't you from a desert? Piece of advice if you want to be rice in Suna is that you invest in certain things. Water import is one, but another are skin care products, Temari explained to him. You think anyone likes to feel coarse skin all the time? You'd be amazed at how much of that stuff people buy, given how much damage heat and sand can do to your skin. Naruto hadn't thought about it. Then again, he had seen those large bottles of skincare products that she had in her room and in the main bathroom. Eventually she decided to give him a chance and moved down a bit to give him room. Naruto was a little nervous at this point. No girl had even let him do anything like this before. But he gently placed his hands on her shoulders and started to experiment with what felt good for her. After a little trial and error, he eventually found what seemed to work. From Temari started to sigh at times. Temari was surprised with herself that she let him do this, but at the moment it felt too damn good to care. Damn, always with the surprises, Temari thought, feeling much more relaxed now with one Naruto on her feet and the other by her shoulders and neck. It felt very good. Okay, maybe there will be something else to look forward to in this marriage. Temari felt her eyelids getting heavy and soon she rested against Naruto as he continued to work on her. After a while, Naruto noticed that she had fallen asleep and he looked at her. Her face was more peaceful like this. She sighed as she seemed to snuggle against him a little and Naruto blushed as she did. His clone was giving him a scowl like he wished he had been in his place but didn't say anything to wake her. Naruto looked down at her and he smiled. She really was pretty, especially when she relaxed her face like this. All the tension was gone and it was like he was seeing a part of her that she kept hidden from the world. He really shouldn't enjoy this, but he couldn't help it, but eventually he figured he might as well put her in her room. He motioned for the clone to get closer and whispered something to him. He nodded and ran off quietly upstairs as Naruto gently moved Temari into his arms. She was a bit bigger, but Naruto was stronger than he looked. Carrying her bridal style, he gently walked up the stairs. Her gentle breathing was against his neck and he had to admit it felt nice. He gulped as he felt himself getting all warm. Her door was open when he got there as the clone had made sure it was, and her bed covers were pulled back too. Naruto gently laid her in the bed and covered her up, and for a moment he stood there smiling at her. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't look away from her like this. On instinct he gently ran a hand over her cheek and she moaned something in her sleep as he quickly pulled back in case she woke up and asked what he was doing. He saw his clone there and jerked his head to the door. A couple of hours later Temari woke up feeling well rested. She wasn't sure why at first as she looked around. She was confused as to why she was in her bed. The last thing she remembered was getting a very good massage by Naruto. She blushed remembering that she had no idea the blonde was so good. Damn, get a hold of yourself, Temari thought as she got out of bed. Okay, so he's good with his hands, no need to get like that, even though it did feel really nice. She sighed to herself as she wondering how long she had been out and how she got into bed. Temari smelled something cooking and followed it to the kitchen. Hey, you're up. I wasn't sure if I should wake you or not. Naruto smiled at her as he noticed her walking in. It's all right, by the way, how did I get up to my room? Oh, that. Naruto blushed a bit as he turned around to the stove. Well, you fell asleep against me and I thought you might be more comfortable in your bed, so I carried you up there. Oh, thanks. Temari blushed a bit at how she had fallen asleep against him. At least she was sure he didn't try anything with her. As she sat down she remembered her earlier talk with Sakura about him and decided she would try and get to know those that knew Naruto best. From their talks he talked a lot about a guy named Iruka who was teaching at the academy and some kid named Konohamaru. Maybe she could stop by there and see what she could dig up about Naruto. Chapter 11. Looking into the past. Team 7 had been given a day off by Kakashi. Apparently he was looking into something and it would take some time, so he left them a free day. Naruto wanted to see Lee in the hospital as the boy was going into his surgery soon and he wanted to support him. Sakura had agreed to go as well. Sasuke said he had better things to do, which of course started an argument with Naruto that lasted for a bit. Temari said she had a few things she needed to take care of and would meet up with Naruto back at their home. Temari figured this was the best time to start looking into the blonde puzzle that was Naruto Uzumaki. She had read his file back in Suna when she was told who she was to marry. The files they did have came from the Shared Information Act that the previous alliance had that would give the basic information on active ninja that weren't Anbu. It was a way to prevent villages that were friendly with each other to prevent complications while on mission or met up in the field. Also, Suna had just before the invasion had made up files on all active ninja they could find. The Suna intelligence section had stopped every other mission for the planned invasion of Konoha. Given the failure of that invasion, Temari had a good guess that many people lost their jobs if not their lives for failure to gain the proper intelligence for just how strong this village was. At any rate she had memorized his records, but some of it didn't make any sense as she had gotten to know Naruto. He was an orphan from a family name that had no record to it. Uzumaki just didn't seem to exist in any records that her people could find, and there had never been an Uzumaki clan at any point that she could find. But to gain entrance into the academy you needed to be sponsored, usually by a guardian or parent. But Naruto's had been signed by the third Hokage himself, which was very odd. Even the third had emancipated Naruto at a young age, taking him out of the orphanage and even gave him an apartment. There was obviously something going on. It was nagging at her lately. Naruto's grade showed him the last in his class and she had to admit that his book smarts weren't all that great. His taijutsu was basic, but he improvised a lot in his fights while disregarding his own safety, like injuries didn't matter to him. His ninjutsu, however, was very impressive as he had learned a move of the fourths in a month. He was also making good progress with his wind manipulation as well. There were also times he had great insight into things, so his grade didn't make much sense to her. There were so many things that didn't make sense, so she needed to start piecing things together. That was to start talking to those that knew Naruto the most. The ramen stand people seemed nice and apparently knew him very well, but right now she was heading for the academy. Hopefully she could find this Iruka that Naruto had talked about. She had seen a picture that the young man had of himself with strange goggles on his head with a man with a scar on his face, both smiling. Know where the man was and what he looked like. She had an idea it wouldn't be a problem to find him. Thankfully, Naruto had given her a very good tour of the village and her time here, both in the Chunin exams and her living here. Temari had started to know the village fairly well. She walked her way to where the academy was and remembered Naruto showing her the building. To her it wasn't all that impressive, a few stories, and looked like it could hold somewhere around 5 to 8 classes. She also remembered this as the place where they had met up for the Chunin exams with that written test that Scared Freak made them take. She still couldn't believe all that hard work in that test was for nothing. Temari then smiled as she remembered the end of that test, with Naruto slamming his hand onto the desk and voicing his claim of not giving up. At the time she didn't think much of it, but looking back she had to admit that Naruto wasn't going to let anyone or anything stand in his way of being Hokage. When she got inside there was a helpful lady at the front desk that told her where to find the teacher by the name of Iruka. Temari signed in and made her way to where the classroom was. She wasn't sure if the class was in session or not, and if it was she would have to wait for a break to talk to him. Fortunately when she got to the room the door was open. She looked inside the empty class with only a man writing on papers, most likely grading them. She could see kids playing outside the window in the back of the building and guessed she had good timing. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Iruka," Temari asked as she entered the room. Iruka looked up to the blonde girl a little confused at first seeing the Leaf Village symbol around her neck. He didn't remember who she was at first, but the fan on her back made him kick in his memory. He had seen the Sand team only a couple of times and never up close, but that fan was something that stuck out in memory. "Ah, you wouldn't happen to be Temari, would you?" Iruka asked in a friendly manner. Temari nodded. "Yes I am, and I take it that you are Iruka." It was more a statement than question, but Iruka nodded anyway as he stood up to grate her. She had heard all about the whole arranged marriage with Naruto and he felt for the boy. He had been so busy the past couple of weeks he kept missing Naruto at the ramen stand. "So what can I do for you?" he asked her. Temari wasn't sure what to say at first. She had thought about several things to talk about but decided to lead up to the really important questions she wanted to ask. "Naruto has talked a lot about many of the people in his life. I think I've met most of them, but I wanted to meet more of them. Since they're important to him I thought I should get to know them as his future wife." It was still a bit hard to say that. Not that marrying Naruto was something she hated. In fact lately she was starting to get comfortable with the idea. She could have been chosen to marry a lot worse in her opinion. It was that she was 16 and going to marry already at that age next month. "Given that I felt I should meet them," Temari added. "Plus we haven't really gotten any visitors, so I wanted to make sure they knew they were welcomed in our household. Although that pervert of a Sanin better be on his good behavior from now on," Temari darkly thought. "Well, that's good to hear." Iruka smiled at her. "I kept meaning to come by, but I've been busy lately with all the tests this week. But I would like to stop by as I haven't seen Naruto in a while and want to see how he's doing." Temari gave a small smile at the man. He gave off a very friendly vibe and he seemed to really care about Naruto. In their talks together she got the feeling that Naruto looked up to Iruka like an older brother in many ways. She could see that the feeling was mutual here as well for the older man. "I was wondering," Temari said. "Could you tell me more about him? I mean, every time I think I know more about Naruto something just comes up, and well." Iruka gave a small laugh at that. "Yeah, he's very surprising, isn't he? I've known him for years and he still surprises me at times. So what would you like to know about him?" "Anything you can tell me. I want to know what his life was like here at school." Temari noted a slight drop in his smile. "Well, he was always a unique student," Iruka sighed. "He pulled pranks, got into trouble, and he just really acted out a lot. Although I know he's a good kid, he just wanted attention and didn't care how or what kind of attention he got growing up. Because he was an orphan and didn't have any family," Temari stated, but as Iruka nodded she felt like he was holding back something else but couldn't place what it was. "I lost my parents at an early age as well, but I still remember them," Iruka said solemnly. "It was tougher for Naruto since he has no memory at all of who his parents were." "Do you know?" Temari asked him. "I'm sorry I don't, and I wish I did." The older man sighed. "He once asked me himself when he was younger, but I couldn't tell him anything. He looked so sad at that, and I can't think or a worse thing for not knowing your parents or family." Temari thought back to her mother and brothers, but when she got to her father there was no love for that image. She had nothing but a cold attachment to him, as he was a father in blood only to her. So cold to everyone, even his own family, plus he had been the one to force the demon into Gaara. It was that she guessed that led to the death of her mother as well, so to her she could have lived without knowing that part of her family. So how come his grade have been so bad? Temari asked him, who looked a little surprised by the question. I've heard Sasuke call him an idiot and dead last many times, and I found out he was at the bottom of the class, but it makes no sense. He's shown a lot more skill than most genin his age and even has some skills above a chunin. Iruka was surprised at that. Sure, he knew Naruto was special and had gotten stronger since his time at the academy, but this girl's claims were more than he thought that Naruto had done. Then again, lately he had heard people talking about Naruto in a more positive light. Sure, some people were still against him, mainly the civilian branch of the village, but a lot of the ninjas had been impressed by him lately. The rumor of how he had defeated Gaara was also going around. Many thought that was in some way linked to Temari being here as well. Really? How so? Iruka asked, interested. Well, he can summon toads. I'm teaching him wind manipulation and he can use something called a Rasengan. Iruka was struck with surprise at the last part. He knew what the Rasengan was, as did most of the ninja in the village. His surprise was later turned into a very proud smile as Naruto was starting to shape up into a great ninja. There's something else I've been hoping to ask. Temari had figured with the small talk out of the way she could get into the real heart of the matter. I was hoping that if you knew his family then you could explain something to me, but I guess that's out of the question now. You see, I've been noticing cold looks at Naruto. At first I thought it was me, as I know there are many that still don't like Suna. But the cold looks that Naruto gets seems to also be when I'm not close to him. I thought maybe the Uzumaki family had done something in the past and it fell onto Naruto's shoulders. Iruka suddenly didn't like where this was going. The girl was digging into Naruto's past and that wasn't good. The secret of the 9 tails was an S-class secret, and so far the girl had noticed how some of the older generation still had a cold hatred for Naruto, or at least what was inside of him. Well, he has pulled many pranks in his life and some people never can forget or forgive, he said to her, hoping to evade the truth. Temari didn't look convinced by that. I thought about it, but it wouldn't add up with the amount of looks he gets. There's something more, and I had been hoping that to find out what the source of it was. Iruka could see that Temari was a smart girl who could see more than what was on the surface that was both good and bad. Good for her out in the field, as that had saved lives of many ninja from failing to fall into traps and ambushes. But the bad thing was she was putting that into looking into Naruto's past. Temari was going to say something else, but she was interrupted when a very loud voice was heard. Iruka-sensei. Temari turned to see 3 kids running into the room, and they seemed familiar for some reason to Temari, especially the loud one with the long scarf. Konohamaru. What is going on? Why aren't you 3 outside with the others? Iruka asked them. We accidentally kicked the ball we were using onto the roof and hoped you could let us go up and get it, Konohamaru said, and then noticed the tall blonde girl there. It took a moment for him to realize that he knew this girl. The last time he had seen her she had been wearing a white battle dress and not the purple one she had on now. Ah, I know you. Konohamaru pointed accusingly at her. You were with that jerk with the makeup on his face. Then it clicked where Temari had met him. He had been the little brat that ran into her younger brother Kankuro. Konohamaru, be nice. This is Temari-san, who will be marrying Naruto, Iruka told the young boy. All 3 kids looked shocked at the news. Naruto had told them that he was stuck into this, but they didn't know who the girl was. Although this was something that he never would have thought, that the mean blonde girl from before was marrying Naruto. Why does Naruto Nichan have to marry this girl? Konohamaru pouted angrily. Temari narrowed her eyes at that. Was the kid implying that she wasn't good enough for Naruto? She was the daughter of the late Kage, top of her class and one of the best damn kunoichi in her age group and even in a few other age groups. She had given up a lot for this alliance marriage as well, and she would be damned if this little brat said she wasn't good enough. With hands on her hips she leaned down to glare at the little kid. He had the good sense to take a slight step back from her. Look, brat, it's not like either of us had a choice in the matter, but we're both making the best of it. Yeah, well, you better be nice to him or else. The little kid threatened, although everyone in the room knew it was an empty threat. He was just trying to stick up for Naruto and look tough in front of everyone. Temari looked at the kid, and for a split second, she thought him almost a mini clone of Naruto at that moment. In fact, he acted a lot like the blonde boy, and she started to see the influence Naruto seemed to have on him. The boy seemed to really look up to Naruto, almost with a kind of hero worship. She was wondering what he did to get the boy's total respect like this. Temari gave a small smile. You really look up to him, huh? Konohamaru was puzzled by that for a moment. Yeah. Why is that? The boy wasn't sure if he should say, and looked to his two best friends, who nodded. Well, before him everyone called me honorable grandson, just because my grandpa was. He looked a bit saddened at that. It still hurt that his grandfather was gone now. He had gotten over that fact that Tsunade was now Hokage, but still it was a missing piece of his life that he would never get back. Was the Hokage. He finished. Temari hadn't known that. In fact, it was Orochimaru that had tricked her village into attacking and killed this boy's grandfather, as well as was responsible for so much death. Everyone called me by that title, and no one outside of my family called me Konohamaru, the boy continued. Everyone treated me differently, and I didn't like it. It was like no one saw the real me and only this honorable grandson. They kept calling me. I wanted to be seen as Konohamaru, as myself. But then Naruto was the first one to notice me, the real me. Konohamaru's face seemed to light up at this point. He takes time to play with us and teaches us all kinds of things. He's the first real friend I had before I met Moegi and Udon. Yeah, Naruto Nichan is the best, Moegi said as Udon nodded his head. Temari should have known that Naruto would have this effect on people. After all, it was him that seemed to have changed Gaara for the better. Wherever he went, the boy seemed to bring new life into the lives of others. So what has he been teaching you kids anyway? Iruka suddenly got a very bad feeling at this point when he saw the familiar glint in Konohamaru's eyes. It was the same look Naruto gave before he pulled off that technique. He taught me this great move that he made up for dealing with perverts. He then ran through the hand signs before Iruka could yell at him to stop. Sexy jutsu. Temari saw the smoke, and the shock on her face would have been priceless to her brother. There before her was now a very attractive brunette girl in a seductive pose who was totally naked with a few pieces of smoke here and there. There was a thud as her head wiped around to see Iruka on the floor with blood from his nose. She then turned her attention back to the naked woman with a glare. Konohamaru turned back into his normal form with his eyes closed in a huge smile. What do you think? It's one of his most famous creations. Temari didn't say a word until she got close enough to the boy and gripped his ear very painfully. The boy yelled out as he tried to break away, but she gripped it tighter, letting him know that he wasn't getting away and shouldn't try. Are you telling me that Naruto, my Naruto, made that jutsu and taught it to a kid? Temari said in an angry tone. Why, yeah. The boy winced as his ear was starting to hurt. I'm going to kill him, Temari said as she let go of his ear. I never want to see you pull something like that in front of me again. Are we clear? The three kids nodded as one as they took a few paces back in fear of the blonde woman. They watched as she stalked out of the room in search of her fiancé and teach him the proper things that you do and do not teach children. The Konohamaru Corps watched her leave and were starting to pray that Naruto could either outrun her or hoped she didn't actually kill him. Iruka had managed to recover, and although he didn't like that jutsu, at least he wouldn't admit to liking it. He had to be thankful that it got Temari's mind off Naruto's past. This could end up bad, Iruka thought as he cleaned off the blood on his jacket. She's getting a little too close. I'll have to talk to Naruto about this, as only he can be the one to tell her, or at last he should tell her. She'll have to know eventually, but I just hope he can trust her enough to open up about this. Later that day, Naruto and Sakura were walking out of the hospital. Both of them were happy that Lee was in high spirits for his operation and had already challenged Naruto to a spar when he got all better. Naruto, being Naruto, agreed to it all too happily. Sakura was amazed that Tsunade could be able to heal the kind of damage done to Lee. She was truly an amazing person. I'm so glad that Lee will get better, Sakura said as they walked on together. Yeah, I'm sure that Tsunade Bachan will heal him up in no time, Naruto said with that ever-present fox-like grin on his face. Sakura gave a small smile and nodded. Sometimes I wish I could be as strong as her, Sakura wished out loud. She's one of the strongest ninja in the world and can heal so many things that most people would think impossible. Hey, you're getting stronger every day, Sakura-chan, Naruto said to his friend. Temari is helping you out and Kakashi-sensei isn't being as lazy as usual, well except on those stupid D-rank missions. But you shouldn't sell yourself short, we've all have come a long way and we can all still get stronger together. Sakura was grateful for Naruto's outlook, he always made things better for some reason. Still, she had been wondering just what kind of ninja she wanted to be lately. She was learning her water jutsus and nearly got them down perfectly, her hand-to-hand was getting a lot better, her genjutsu was just above average, mostly dealing with spotting and disrupting them. Temari was a long-range wind user with tactical thinking, Sasuke was a mid to close-range fighter with his Sharingan to copy the moves of the enemies made him a great fighter. Naruto, she had to admit, was just as good lately, his skills were growing so fast she couldn't keep up with him. But what could she say of herself? She thought of other teams and how they blended well into each other, each person's special talents complemented each other. Tenten was a weapons mistress in the making, Neji was a great fighter and scout, Lee's specialty in taijutsu, Ino with her mind abilities could gain information like no one else, Shino with his bugs, Kiba with Akamaru were great trackers, and the list went on. So what could she say about herself that made her stand out? Overall she was very average, so what was her strengths? She had great chakra control, but what could that be used for? So far the only two main options would be genjutsu, but that wasn't Kakashi's specialty. If she had been put with Kurenai she was sure that she would have gone that route, but the only other thing was medical jutsu, and who could train in her in that? Hey Sakura-chan, what are you thinking so hard about? Naruto asked, seeing how quiet she had been. Her face had taken on a serious thinking expression. Huh. Oh, nothing, just thinking about the future is all, she said, smiling at him. She didn't want to worry him, after all this was her problem and she wanted to be the one to figure it out. Naruto just shrugged and let it rest as they walked on. Eventually they had to go their separate ways and said goodbye to each other. Naruto was walking on his way to his home and wondered if Temari would be home yet. He smiled at that. It felt really nice to go home and someone could actually be there for once. Hey, Naruto. Naruto looked over and saw Iruka waving to him. The boy got a huge smile on his face, he hadn't seen him in a while. Iruka-sensei. Naruto yelled and ran over to him. How have you been, Naruto? The man asked him. Naruto put on that foxy grin of his again. It's going great, I'm learning all kinds of new things and I've gotten tons stronger. So I've heard. Iruka smiled and then he got a more serious look on his face. Naruto, I have something important to talk to you about. But not here, it's something we can't really talk about in the open. Naruto blinked in confusion for a bit until he figured out what he was talking about and he felt his stomach sink. It had to be about the fox, as there was nothing else that Iruka could mean. Naruto nodded and they quickly left for Iruka's apartment. Naruto sat down on the couch as Iruka sat down with him, and Naruto was a little worried about just what he wanted to talk about exactly. Naruto, you should know that Temari came by the school today, Iruka said to him. She was looking into your past, it would seem. Naruto got a very bad feeling at the moment, he had seen how smart she had been. Hell, that shogi game she had brought with her, he had never even came close to beating her, and she knew a lot of things as well. He would have to say she was one of the smartest people he knew. If she put together that his birthday was the same day that the Kyuubi was defeated, she might start to put things together. He looked down at his feet. Things were finally starting to go well, and now if she found out about the demon she might hate him. It wasn't fair how this stupid fox inside of him kept screwing with his life. No one had wanted to adopt him. No one would recognize him, and he had been alone for most of his life because of it. Sure, things had gotten a bit better lately, but he was still afraid. It was the fear of being rejected and going back to that loneliness again that prevented him from telling his friends the truth. He just didn't want to lose more to the damn fox again. He had too much taken from him by that demon as it was. Naruto. Maybe you should tell her before she finds out, Iruka said gently to him. But what if she hates me? Naruto asked him desperately. I mean, maybe she won't find out. Iruka gave him a look of pity as the boy had to deal with so much in his life. Naruto, I think she might figure things out sooner or later. Plus she'll be your wife soon, so doesn't she have a right to know? Naruto felt a little guilty at that. He still remembered how on that trip to get Tsunade, he had ran into Itachi Uchiha and that strange fish guy. They had been after him because of what was inside of him. They had even gotten into the village and put Kakashi in the hospital as well. If they came again, would they use Temari against him? He could see them doing it as well, and it didn't seem right to put her in danger and not tell her. It will be better if it came from you than some stranger, or if she figured it out. Those words hit him just as hard. Naruto knew he had to tell her, but in all honesty he wished he didn't have to. How would he even begin to tell her this? Would she call off the whole wedding thing because of it, or would she end up being cold to him for the rest of their lives together? Naruto felt like a pit of blackness in his core at the thought of that kind of life. He wanted her to at least like him, but who would want to be with someone who had a demon in them? Ever since he had found out what was inside of him, he had been scared to tell anyone, but now he didn't have a choice. He thanked Iruka for telling him, and he walked out of the apartment with his hands in his pockets and a downcast look. Iruka felt bad for Naruto, but he had to tell him what was going on, and he had to make the choice of what to tell Temari. Iruka just prayed that things would work out for the boy. Chapter 12. Truth comes out. Orochimaru was still in his bed as he tried to blot out the pain in his arms. It had been too long since that old man had taken his arms from him with that jutsu. If the old man wasn't dead, he would have killed him in the most slow and painful of ways. He grunted in pain as his arms were slowly decaying. Having the flesh of your body slowly falling apart on you gave you pain unlike anything a person could imagine. Of course he knew it wasn't really his body. His original body was long since gone. All the research into immortality had left him only one option: to cast off an old body like a snake sheds its skin. The bodies of course would have to be injected and altered so that he would be able to use some of his more special abilities. It was time consuming, but thankfully he had refined the process by now. At first it took him nearly a year for the body to be altered enough, but now it only took a few months. But no matter what, he could never make the bodies last. They burned out too quickly for him. 3 years, and he needed to find a new host, and he had to be careful because not just any body would do. Orochimaru had to make sure they were strong bodies, as weak ones wouldn't last as long and they couldn't be enhanced enough with all the drugs and forbidden techniques he needed to put into them. He had learned early on to not just have one person to be his next host, but to find those that were perfect for him was hard to find. Only the truly exceptional could be his body, like Kimimaro, the leader of the Sound 5 Wells Sound 4. Now his bloodline ability was truly one of a kind. But the boy was dying and wouldn't last even with the curse mark on him, and so the boy was on life support, kept alive for the last time. Orochimaru would need him. A few others could be used, but he wanted Sasuke Uchiha. The Sharingan with the ability to copy all jutsu would let him learn in 3 years what would take him 300 years to learn. After his failure with Itachi, Sasuke was the only option. While true the boy was a bit too young, Orochimaru had ways to alter the body to that of a more adult form. But he needed the boy for other reasons. With the boy's body he could use the DNA to help recreate the Uchiha clan. His previous experiments in Konoha before his exile, he had been trying to recreate the wood abilities of the first, and he felt he had been close. One had survived, and although he didn't know it, he had heard rumors of a masked Anbu with wood abilities. When he heard of that, Orochimaru had started up with his DNA project again, and when he got Sasuke he could find a way to make a whole new line of Sharingan users to use in the future. He could infuse a fetus with that and let it grow in a tank, or he could always do artificial insemination. He had plans for both at any point. The strongest female warriors were already picked out in advance, and Kabuto kept an eye out for any future prospects. Unlike his ex-teammate, he never was interested in the whole sexual side of relationships. To Orochimaru it seemed too vulgar a process. He never understood that part of humanity, and he never would. He just felt it was a good thing he was like this. It was only a distraction and he could focus more on his work. Pain flared up again in his arms and he cried out for Kabuto. He needed more medicine to help with the pain. Soon the flesh of his arms wouldn't be able to hold together, and then infections would start to spread through his body. Even with all the enhancements, if his body was too weak he could still get sick. Kabuto tried to numb the nerves, but for some reason it wasn't working. He yelled again when the boy hadn't shown up. The door flew open as Kabuto rushed into the room. Orochimaru yelled for more medicine and the boy ran to the side table where they all were. He injected several compounds into his body through the ruined arms, and then into the main body. The needles were less painful than his arms at the moment, but soon the pain started to lessen. It never left him, but it was now tolerable. Where the hell is Sasuke? Orochimaru demanded. The Sound Four are still watching him as per your orders, Kabuto said as he put the medicine away. Apparently he's been training himself trying to learn how to use your little gift so far. But they haven't risked being seen yet, even though thanks to your knowledge on Konoha's security they could still be found out. I don't know how much longer I can wait, Orochimaru said angrily. If the old fool hadn't used that jutsu on me I could afford to wait, but I need a new body. With Tsunade's refusal to heal me I need a new body. He still was supposed to have at least 2 years more with this new body, but he had to change quickly. Normally changing so fast wasn't a good idea as it would weaken him to keep changing too fast, but he had no choice. He wanted the Uchiha body for so long and one was almost within his grasp. The boy's lust for power, for revenge would surely motivate the boy to seek him out. Plus the curse seal was also there. It would give him power while feeding on his negative emotions and even increasing them. That was one of his best pieces of work, something that would slowly twist the minds that used them. The darker the urges, the better the seal would work. It was unfortunate that his first success in Anko had been a disappointment. The girl would have made a fine apprentice and maybe even a good host body one day. But she lacked the need for power. She had been physically strong enough to survive, but she was too weak as a person. She was too soft, and so he left her to die in that place. He had been surprised to learn she had survived, but it had been fun to run into his old student again. She had grown but was still too soft. The curse mark worked against her because she fought against it, instead of embracing it. Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto asked him. How much longer do I have? Orochimaru asked. At the rate of decay I would say 2 weeks at best. Orochimaru's face twisted in pain and anger. He couldn't afford to wait that long. Sasuke was taking too long to join him and he was quickly running out of options. Start the preparations for a new host, Orochimaru spat out. Uchiha District. Sasuke had been working hard on trying to understand the seal that Orochimaru put on him. After his team was let go for the day he had gotten as many scrolls on sealing and seals that he could from the library of his clan. Although he only knew the simple ones for how to seal weapons, he had thought it wouldn't be that tough. Although called a genius, it turned out that seals required a different type of genius. The formulas were very complex and just getting a rudimentary grasp of it was difficult. There was also the fact that Orochimaru had created this seal himself and there were no official records, although he bet there were classified ones, but even he couldn't get those. Only high-ranking Jonins would be the only ones to get those kinds of records and would most likely need to have the Hokage's approval too. He knew he couldn't go to Kakashi to ask for them because he wouldn't approve of what he was doing. Sasuke needed more power and this seal seemed like the best way to go about it. He remembered when it first activated, he had never felt so powerful or so alive at that moment. He had been enjoying himself in ways he had thought lost to him. When he had been trying to tear that Sound Genin's arms off, he had liked it. All battles after he had never felt like that again and he was wondering why. In battle he only thought about victory, but that point he had for the first time actually liked being in battle. He had thrived in the heat of the moment and from even the pain he had been inflicting at the time to the Sound Genin. At any rate, so far the seal was too complicated for him to figure anything out. Whatever it was, he had to work it out on his own. Which led him to his practice sessions by the lake where he had mastered that fire jutsu. That had been when his father had finally taken notice of him. When his father had told him that he was going to train Sasuke personally, Sasuke had been overjoyed. He had been living in his older brother's shadow all his life and finally he was being recognized. He had gone to bed that night happier than he had been in a long time and couldn't wait until the next day. But that was the night when his world was destroyed. Itachi had but butchered his clan and family, had tortured him for 3 days and left him broken there among the blood and corpses of his mother and father. He was alone in the world. There was no brother to look up to, no father for advice and no mother who always made him feel safe and warm. All he felt was the numbing cold of the hole that was left in his life. Sasuke started up his warm-up routine as he started to practice his family fighting style. He remembered the times his brother would train him. Back then everything was good. He had loved his older brother and looked up to him, which what made his betrayal all the more hard on the younger Sasuke. The one person he thought he could trust, shattered that bond forever. Sasuke threw out a series of punches as the memories came flooding back to him. He remembered after he had been found, how he had been in the hospital for a few months. He was shaken by the experience, he hadn't been able to sleep at night at all. Every shadow he had looked to see if Itachi would come back to finish the job. Sasuke had waited all night long in case his older brother had changed his mind and came to kill him too. He could only sleep in the days when he felt safe, but at night he waited. Sasuke now started with the kicking combos, then into blocks and parries. His body moved on its own as his mind battled with the memories that were swarming him. The fact was that he didn't hate Itachi at first, no, that came later. At first he had been scared of Itachi, scared that he was going to wake up one night with Itachi over his bed. Those red eyes glaring at him as he plunged a sword into Sasuke's heart. After a few months when he knew Itachi wasn't coming back, he had gone home for the first time. He had seen the empty homes and streets and he could see the fresh paint to cover the blood that had been spilt there. He stood in the center of the Uchiha district for a long time that day. He felt the tears fall for the first time that day. He had fallen to his knees as he cried his heart out. All that pain and rage he had been bottling up came pouring out of him. He howled his anger into the empty area. He didn't know how long he had been there. The sun had been setting at that point, but by the end of it he felt empty. There were no more tears in him, and he hadn't cried again since that day. He had used up all the tears left in his life in a single moment. All that was left was the emptiness, that cold empty feeling like a hole in his chest. But soon he felt something else there, a cold burning sensation. It was the cold fury that was building up in him. He looked up with hard eyes around him. It was at that moment when he truly vowed to kill his brother, to seek revenge for his entire clan. Sasuke felt the pain where the mark was flaring up. It was an intense sensation and for a moment he could barely stand. The pain slowly faded as he tried to think what caused it to flare up like that. Kakashi had told him that the seal around it was only as strong as his will, but something else must have happened. He had been thinking long and hard about the cursed seal, why it worked at the start and why the other times it had activated it had only weakened him. That first time it activated, that was what he needed to try and focus on. When he had fought Gaara he had needed more power and it had activated, but not like the first time. His body wouldn't respond normally and he felt even weaker. So what was different about the Gaara fight and the fight with the Sound Genin? He came to realization it was the emotions involved. With Gaara he had felt fear and doubt, but not with the Sound Genin. There was more too. It had flared up just when he was thinking of that day he had made his vow to his clan. Something in that moment had triggered it as well. Well, I could try it. Not like I got anything to lose. Sasuke thought to himself. He closed his eyes and tried to remember that day again. He tried to focus on the pain and rage that had been inside of him. He thought of Itachi and what he had done. He thought of their last fight and how he had gone after Naruto of all people. His brother had tossed him aside like he was nothing but had been focused only on Naruto. Naruto, why? Why are you so strong now? You're the dead last. You come from no clan, have no bloodline, there is nothing special about you and yet you keep getting stronger. You kept getting taught the things that I could use to complete my mission. Even Suna sees something in you, most likely for beating Gaara. So why? What makes him so special? Sasuke yelled out as the curse seal activated. He cried out in pain, but this time he didn't try to fight it. He embraced what he was feeling and soon the pain was passing. The black marks, if he could see, were crawling over his body, now covering half of it. He started to feel the power flowing into him and it felt great, better than great even. He threw his head back and laughed as the feeling of the raw power rushing through his body. This is it. This is the power that I need. Now I just need to tame it. Sasuke thought to himself as he grinned. He started his physical workout trying to see how long he could keep the curse seal's power flowing through his body. He was faster and stronger like this. When he met Itachi again, he would use the power of this seal as a surprise and finally kill his brother. Uzumaki home. Temari had been looking all over for Naruto. She tried the ramen stand and then the fourth's head, but so far no luck. Even the Hokage hadn't seen him and none of his friends either. After she had left the school, she was on a mission to find Naruto and to let him know that teaching kids those kinds of things were not okay. She was still pissed after all this time. In fact, not only pissed, but her feet were killing her, which only made her more mad. There was only one place left to check, and that was at home. She stopped in her tracks at that thought. When the hell did I ever start to think of this place as home? Temari asked herself. While she still considered Suna her home and always will, she was surprised by how she was starting to think of her two-story house as home. She sure didn't count the village as home, at least not yet. But for some reason the house was starting to feel like home to her. Sure, she had all her stuff there, but it was more than that, more than just having a place to live. She was actually starting to enjoy her life with Naruto. It was odd, but she was starting to actually like the guy. He made you feel at ease with yourself. He was always warm and his happiness was infectious at times. She shook her head, remembering that she was supposed to be mad at him. As the house came into view, she noticed something on the roof. As she came closer, she could see that someone was sitting on it. Temari had an idea of who it was as well. All that walking around and he was there the entire time. Temari wasn't sure to be pissed or just happy that she had finally found him. She quickly managed to get on to the roof, and there he was, sitting there with his knees pulled up and his arms resting on them. He was looking far off, but his eyes weren't focused as he was in deep thought about something. Temari was about to get out her battle fan when she stopped and took notice of his face. While living with him, she had seen the various faces he had, but this was one she had never seen before. She couldn't help but notice just how different it was, and she was wondering if she was seeing a hidden side of him. Well, I'll ask what's going on. Then I'll give him hell for teaching children that perverted jutsu. Alright, so what the hell is wrong? Temari asked, the irritation in her voice she couldn't hide. Naruto jumped at her voice. He had been so deep in thought that he hadn't even noticed her arriving. He put on that smiling face of his as he scratched the back of his head nervously. For the past hour or so he had been about what to say and how to go about this. He knew that she deserved to know the full truth of the matter, but he couldn't help but worry how she would see him. Oh, well, I guess nothing much. He chuckled, but soon stopped, seeing the serious look on her face. Naruto, she said simply, more like a hidden command than her asking him anything. He flinched a bit before he sighed and looked back out over the village as he got more serious again. Hey Temari, what if you knew something about me, something that might change how you see me? Now Temari was losing her previous anger as she was getting more interested. Was this that something that she had been looking into? Was this that secret that seemed to surround the blonde ninja? She sat down next to him, looking at him. She could see the look in his eyes. They held a pain in them that she hadn't seen in a very long time. She remembered how Gaara's eyes had looked like that, all that pain and loss. Then one night Gaara had changed and his eyes took on that awful look in them. The look of a madman that would kill anyone, even her. For years she had been terrified of Gaara, but then Naruto had changed him. Looking at those blue expressive eyes of his, she was reminded of those old times. Naruto, you can tell me, whatever it is. She told him, her voice gaining a bit more of a gentle tone. She wasn't sure why, but seeing those eyes he had one now reached her. She felt a part of her wanting to comfort him. She wanted to see that usual happy look in them. Naruto was silent a moment, trying to get his courage. It's just that. Have you noticed how some of the villagers don't like me? Temari nodded her head. There's a reason for it. It's not as bad as it used to be lately, but I guess I can see why many of the older generation didn't like me. Naruto said. Do you know of the Kyuubi attack over 13 years ago? Temari nodded. Yeah, I read about it. The great nine-tailed fox, the most powerful of all the Biju. It attacked here and it was your fourth Hokage that killed it. Well, it turns out that it wasn't really killed, Naruto said. Temari was confused as everyone knew the story, even those outside the village. It was said even Iwagakure no Sato celebrated the death of the fourth every year on October 10th. There was something about that date that was nagging her for some reason. It took her a moment to realize that it was Naruto's birthday. She had memorized as much on him that Suna had, and it was listed his birthday as October 10th. In fact, doing the math, he had been born on the day the demon had attacked. Then she remembered his fight with Gaara, when he had turned himself and that huge toad into a replica of the Nine Tails. The sudden realization came crashing down on her, and why shouldn't it? After all, if she was right, then Naruto was exactly like Gaara. "You're a Jinchuriki," she said, surprised by the revelation. Naruto was taken aback by that. He didn't figure that she would figure it out. She was a lot smarter than he had originally thought. "So, you're like Gaara then," she said to him. Yeah." Naruto nodded his head, a little afraid to look her in the eyes. He didn't want to see any fear in them. He was actually starting to like her, and it would be just like his luck for her to not like him because of the stupid fox in his body. "A lot of the older generation didn't like me because they saw me as the demon and not the jailer," Naruto said sadly. "They never did anything physical. But no one would look at me, and the few that did, they only gave me those cold eyes. Some would say things like, 'demon brat,' and 'monster,' to me." Temari couldn't help but feel bad. She had seen what that kind of life had done to Gaara. It was amazing that Naruto hadn't turned out the same. "So everyone knows." Naruto shook his head. "The third placed a law that no one was to talk about it or tell anyone else." The old man hoped that everyone in the younger generation would see me normally, but it didn't work out so good. Temari could guess. The parents would most likely encourage their children to have the same behavior towards Naruto that they had. Children, being children, wouldn't really question their parents after all. In a way, it made her sick, but then again, how was she any different? Maybe if she had tried harder to be a better sister to Gaara, he wouldn't have turned out the same way. Her father had told her and Kankuro to avoid Gaara, and like the good daughter, she had done that. It was just another reason she felt nothing for her father. He had torn their family apart. "I was alone for a very long time," Naruto said to her, but then a small smile got on his lips. "But I had the old man. He could visit me often, and then I found Iruka-sensei. And now I have a lot of friends and people that care for me, and people who I will protect." Temari was amazed that he could think that way. Was what got through to Gaara? Was this the reason that he had liked the idea of her marrying Naruto? Because her baby brother could relate to the other boy. To go through that kind of life and not end up like Gaara spoke to Temari of the kind of inner strength the boy had. She smiled a little, remembering how she had seen that strength in the Chunin exams and against Gaara himself. Naruto's smile faded a bit. "Anyways, I just figured you deserved to know the truth before the wedding. That you should know what you're getting into, and, well, I guess I can understand if you wouldn't want to be with me." There was a sudden silence, and then Naruto felt a fist hitting the back of his head. "Baka!" Temari shouted angrily at him. "You really think that would mean much to me?" Naruto, holding the back of his head, looked at her surprised. "My brother went through all of that too. He's like you, remember?" "Well, yeah, but you were really scared of Gaara, weren't you?" he asked her, confused. He would remember the terror that had been on her face when Gaara first showed up in that tree. He had been afraid to see that look of terror in her eyes when she was looking at him. But she wasn't afraid of him. Angry, sure, but he could live with that. Temari's anger fell away, knowing what he was getting at. "I was afraid of Gaara. For so long he would have killed anyone if he felt like it. It was always dangerous being around him, but after you two fought, something in him had changed. Before I came here, we were actually repairing our relationship. I don't know if I ever thanked you for that, but I do." She looked him in the eyes and gave him a small smile. "Thank you for giving me my brother back." Naruto blinked a few times and smiled. He remembered how Gaara had seemed different, but he hadn't known about how Temari wasn't terrified of him anymore. Temari sighed as she recomposed herself. "Anyways, it doesn't matter. It does explain a few things about you, though. You're the first person I told this secret to," Naruto said, a bit happy how she took it. "I mean, I was afraid if others found out, they would treat me like the older generation." "Well, they're idiots," she said to him. "And you're an idiot for thinking that of me. You should learn to trust me more. After all, we're going to be married soon, so we might as well start to trust each other more." Naruto smiled and nodded. "Yeah, you're right. I promise. No more secrets between us. Temari nodded her head in agreement. So, how come the demon hasn't overcome you? Temari asked out of curiosity. I mean, Gaara can't sleep because of that demon and he's got the weakest in him. Naruto blinked, not sure exactly. I guess the seal on me is different. I've only talked to the damn fox once, after I got pushed off a cliff, stupid arrow Senin. He pushed you off a cliff. Temari wondered what the hell was wrong with that old pervert. It was to get me to draw on the fox's chakra, and although I hate it, it did work. Temari made a mental note to not take any kind of training with that old man, he seemed to take things to the extreme. Can I see your seal? Naruto blushed a bit as he pulled up his shirt, he closed his eyes and gathered the chakra. Temari was curious as the kind of seal that was on Naruto, she wanted to see the difference between this one and the one on her brother. Basically, she wanted a comparison to see if there might be a reason why they had such a difference. She got her answer when she saw the seal on Naruto's stomach of all places. Temari wasn't a seal master or even know all that much other than the basics, but just by looking at the seal she knew it wasn't a normal one. It was the most complex thing she had ever seen. She tried to figure out the bits and pieces she could guess at, but overall it was way beyond her. It was also a lot more complex and strong than what Gaara had on him. This explained why Naruto wasn't tormented by his demon, it was held back by the power of this seal. You're lucky you know that. Naruto was confused by her statement when he pulled down his shirt. That kind of seal would let you have a lot more control, Gaara isn't so lucky. Temari sighed. Even with your help he's constantly at war with the demon, he has been all his life. If he had a seal like this on him he might have had a lot more control and even able to sleep normally. Naruto hadn't thought about it that way, he always cursed the fact he had this sealed in him when he found out. But after meeting Gaara he could see where he could have easily been like that. If the fox ever got more control over him, he knew the fox would make him harm anyone and everything around him. Then he thought that maybe there was a way to help him, he only just learned how to seal stuff into scroll. But Naruto did remember how Jiraiya had helped him with that thing Orochimaru did to his seal. A smile grew on his face as he planned to ask him the next time he saw him, if he could help Gaara with this seal like he had done with Naruto's. Now though he was feeling a lot better, he had been so worried that Temari would reject him, but he guessed he should have known better. She was the first person that he had admitted his greatest secret to and she had accepted him and it felt great. But in the end things had worked out and he was hoping that maybe his friends would one day accept this truth as well, when he was ready, that is to tell them. Naruto. Temari said to him. Yeah? He asked, and just as he turned he was hit on the head with her battle fan. Now he may have a hard head, but the thing was heavy and it hurt like hell. He fell onto his back covering his head. What was that for? Naruto managed to say after a moment. That was for something called sexy jutsu, she said angrily, and Naruto froze up. He looked up at the very angry girl towering over him. How did you know about that? Naruto asked carefully, the pain in his head forgotten for the moment. He was too scared to feel pain. I met that little brat, Konohamaru. She grinned evilly at him. Naruto groaned in his head. For the first time he really wished he hadn't taught him that move. He yelped out when she grabbed him by his collar and glared daggers at him right into his face. He was nervously sweating by now, he had forgotten how scary she could be when she was pissed. Now you look here, Temari said dangerously. We can't get out of his marriage, but there will be some ground rules. First off, you are never to use that thing in public. I may be a leaf genin now, but I am still the daughter of a Kage and we both have to put on a good face in the public because of the alliance our marriage represents. Furthermore, you will not teach that to any of our children. It's bad enough that you taught a child such a thing, but you will not do the same for ours. You got that? She told him and he flat out nodded his head as fast as he could. Good, she said calmly and dropped him. But make no mistake Naruto, you'll have a lot of foot rubs to make up for that. She walked off leaving a sore and confused Naruto behind her. He rubbed his head as he squinted his eyes as he thought, one moment she was understanding, then she was violent and scary. Plus what was that about kids? Arg. I'm never going to understand women. Naruto moaned out holding his head. Chapter 13. The incident. It had been a couple of days since Naruto had told Temari his secret and things had gone well, after she had calmed down. He found out that his soon-to-be wife could hold a grudge. It was still odd to think they were going to be married soon. Tsunade was already saying that she was putting Shizune in charge of organizing it, although Naruto felt that his big sister had enough to deal with under Tsunade at times. He already had to read up on this scroll about wedding ceremonies. He needed someone to stand by him as his best man. He planned to ask Sasuke, but given his attitude lately he was thinking of a backup just in case. He had been talking with Temari and she agreed to have Moegi for her flower girl and he would ask the young girl the next time he saw her with Konohamaru. He was going to ask the boy to be the ring bearer for it, knowing full well the boy would be excited for the job. The only thing that he wasn't looking forward to was the traditional sake used in it. He wasn't sure even if he was old enough to drink. Turns out that once someone became a genin they were a legal adult in the eyes of the village. After all, you couldn't send children into battle and to kill or be killed. So long ago it was agreed by all 5 cages that regardless of age, a genin was an adult and would be treated like one. Although this only was seen in ninja villages, of course, apparently there were plenty of civilian villages that didn't always know about that law. At any rate, Naruto had a lot on his mind. He had just finished his shower and had changed in the bathroom to save time. He placed his dirty clothing in the hamper that Temari told him to use from now on. Okay, so his room was cleaner now without the clothing all over the place and he could find things, but it took getting used to the habit. Temari was in her room looking over some scrolls for the marriage when he passed by. He reminded her that they had training soon and she said she would meet him there. After all, it wasn't like they could be late as Kakashi was hardly ever on time, although their sensei did seem to be more preoccupied lately. Naruto also needed to quickly get certain things he needed for the wedding as well, mainly he needed formal wear and some kind of dagger. He hoped that Iruka would be able to help him out on that as well. Man, who knew that there was so much to do for a wedding? Naruto thought as he exited the home. And I still need to get to Ba-chan to go over other things for it as well. At first he thought it would be just a simple affair, then again he had never been to a wedding before. Plus, since this was a political marriage, it meant the council will be there, heads of all the clans, important people of the village and those from Suna that would be arriving as well. The thought of being in the center of all that actually made him feel a little nervous. Naruto was currently on his way to track down Konohamaru before training when he suddenly realized something. Damn it! I forgot my headband. Naruto had never forgotten that before, it was just proof of how much was on his mind to actually forget it. He quickly created a shadow clone and told him to go and get it and meet him at training with it. Naruto ran off as he only had a little time to track down the young boy and ask him to be his ring bearer. The shadow clone ran off toward the bathroom knowing exactly where it was, since those clones were perfect copies of the original. What neither Naruto nor his clone knew was that Temari had just finished her morning shower. She was just drying her hair when she noticed a leaf headband near the sink. She picked it up and sighed. It wasn't hers, which meant it was Naruto's. Honestly, that guy would lose his head with the way he gets so excited, Temari sighed. She would give it to him later when they met up for training. Apparently he told her yesterday that he was going to see that scarf brat about something. She reached for the doorway and it was at this moment that the clone had come running. She pulled the door open just as the clone slammed into her. If the clone had hit her any harder, then the clone would have dispersed. But thanks to Temari softening the blow, it wasn't. The bad news was that the way they landed, Temari totally naked on her back with what she assumed was Naruto. She had thought he left, hence why she hadn't put the towel around her chest before opening the door. She lay there totally frozen in shock. The clone had no idea what happened. He saw a flash of something like skin before hitting something. His face was against something soft, warm and slightly wet, and not just his face. He was sure he was laying on something, but his face was pressed into something soft. He reached up with one hand to push himself up, but the hand gripped the thing next to his face. It was round all right, firm too, and there seemed to be some kind of a nub on it. The clone had no idea what he was feeling, but he pushed up and he froze in horror. There beneath him was Temari, a very naked Temari, a very red and naked Temari. He noticed his hand was gripped on one of her breasts. The clone suddenly got a nosebleed as this was the first real naked girl he had seen and he was groping her too. That was when Temari, in a very unlike Temari manner, did what any woman would do. She shrieked. The clone, covering his bloody nose, leapt back onto his butt. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Temari pulled up her legs and covered her breasts with one arm, now looking embarrassed and pissed off. Pervert. Wait. I'm a CL. The clone didn't finish before her free hand punched the clone in the face, and this time it did disperse. She stared in confusion at first, but then her anger started to grow. Naruto Uzumaki. Meanwhile, the real Naruto had been leaping from building to building when a sudden image and sensations hit him. Normally he had never noticed that he got all the memories and experiences of his clones. This was for several reasons. In a fight things got hectic and he never paid attention to anyone other than who he had been fighting. Another was that he just never thought about it. The main was that he was as dense as a brick at times. But the image of a naked Temari and the feel of her breast was one image that he couldn't ignore. He first got a huge nosebleed as he covered it with his hands. Unfortunately, this caused him to trip and fall onto the rooftop. He landed. He lay there in total shock and confusion. What the hell was that? Naruto yelled out. Did that really happen, or was I just imagining things? For the first time he really thought about the memory he just got, and he was surprised to learn that he remembered seeing himself, then going through the home and then the bathroom. I got to find Kakashi-sensei. Naruto yelled as he went in search of his teacher to hopefully explain things. Maybe it was just all in his head, he hoped so, because Temari would be so angry with him if that had actually happened. Training field. Kakashi was making his way to the training field. He was a bit late, but that wasn't unusual. Although, lately Kakashi had been too busy to pay his normal respects to Obito and Rin. Even though her body was never found, she was presumed dead. So far he had managed to get Jiraiya to look at Anko's mark, and Kakashi had gone over a few seal improvements. Although it was still guesswork, since the only person that truly understood the curse marks was Orochimaru, progress was being made up. He could see how Anko was getting a little impatient, but she was keeping it bottled up. He couldn't blame her. If he found a way to help seal off the mark, Anko would love it. Then maybe he could see about Sasuke, and not a moment too soon. Lately the last Uchiha had been more distant and brooding lately. But at least the other members seemed to be doing fine. Sakura was training hard for once and was improving. Temari was starting to fit in, and Naruto was improving the most. He was glad that Temari was a wind user, as she was the perfect teacher for Naruto, and it would make them closer. Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked up to see a familiar orange blur running towards him. Naruto, what are you doing here instead of your team? Kakashi asked, and then noticed something. Where's your headband? Naruto blushed for some reason that made Kakashi raise a single eyebrow a bit. Obviously something had happened. Forgot it in the bathroom. Naruto looked about. Kakashi sighed. Naruto, I'm surprised at you for forgetting it. No matter, but don't make a habit of it. Since this is the first time you've done this, I'll overlook it. Forgetting the leaf headband while on duty was actually an offense in most ninja villages. Even though ninja dress codes were extremely relaxed, the headband was to always been worn, with the exception of black op missions when you can't be identified. For a genin to forget it, well, it wasn't too big a deal. Usually a small fine or punishment by the sensei would be enough. It got worse the higher in rank you went. Anyways, there's something important I need to ask you. Naruto shouted out as usual. Well, what is it? Kakashi asked him. It was obviously important for the boy. You use shadow clones too, right? Naruto asked, remembering the battle on the bridge in Wave. Well, do you ever remember anything they do? Kakashi just looked at him for a long moment, blinking a few times. He honestly didn't think that Naruto hadn't noticed until now. With the ways he used shadow clones, one would think he would notice that the clones sent all their experience back to the original. Naruto, are you telling me you haven't noticed until just now, that the experiences of your shadow clones go to you after they dispel? Kakashi asked him. Naruto got a surprised look on his face. Huh, you mean that's supposed to happen? Kakashi nearly face faulted at that point. Naruto, of course it's supposed to happen. I know how you learned the technique from the Forbidden Scroll, didn't you read the explanation of it? Naruto scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Not really. I wasn't really paying that much attention. Kakashi hung his head for a moment. He should have seen that coming. Anyway, that's the point of shadow clones, Naruto. You see, they're used mainly for information gathering. You send one into a dangerous area and anything they see you get at a safe distance. They are perfect copies, hence why they can go on their own unlike the simple clones. Naruto blinked a few times. Okay. Say you need to read 3 scrolls. You can use a shadow clone to read the other 2 and you can learn in a fraction of the time. Kakashi explained simply to him. Oh, I get it. Naruto suddenly fully understood. Hey, if I can learn in a fraction of the time, does that mean I can train faster too? Kakashi thought about it. Normally that wouldn't be possible. Shadow clones could be very hard on a person with long use, but for some reason, Naruto was perfect for it. Actually, while thinking on that, there could be something to it after all. Well, you would still have to work on your physical body. Shadow clones can't help you in that area. Why not? Naruto asked. Because if physical change could be transferred, any damage they got would be transferred to you. And given the number of lethal blows your clones have taken, Kakashi trailed off. Naruto gulped and nodded. He knew exactly what his sensei was talking about, and now he was glad that physical stuff wasn't transferred. Kakashi continued on with his explanation. Anyways, things like practicing fighting moves, meditation to increase focus, chakra use. Those kinds of things could be done. If you use one shadow clone for training and focus on its knowledge, then you'll train twice as fast. If you have 3, then you'll train 3 times as fast. Naruto's eye lit up at the possibilities now. With the number of clones he could make, he could train 50 times faster than anyone else. He got a huge grin on his face as he couldn't wait to try this out. Thanks a lot, Kakashi-sensei. Just be careful, Naruto. No one has ever trained like that before. So please, don't overdo it for once, Kakashi told him. Who do you think I am? He grinned up at the man. Kakashi sighed. Someone who always rushes in head first and always overdoes things, that's who. They made their way back to the training field and he noticed that Naruto suddenly tensed up. Kakashi cast a glance at the genin and tried to find what was making him nervous. He saw Temari there with a deep blush as she looked away, not even paying attention to Naruto. Trouble in paradise, huh? Kakashi mentally sighed. It was expected something would happen. No couple was perfect and they were forced into this after all. He just hoped whatever was wrong they would be able to work it out. Temari, when she saw Naruto, couldn't even look at him. She felt her face heat up as she quickly turned away from him. She couldn't even speak to him, especially since she couldn't yell at him for what happened. The last thing she wanted to know was for what happened to get out. Naruto knew that it hadn't actually been him that had, well, groped her. But he still remembered it, and how she looked and felt. He quickly tried not to think about it. He could feel the nosebleed coming on. Although it had felt so good, he didn't know a girl could feel that nice. Damn it, I'm hanging around Ero Sennin too much. Naruto yelled in his mind. Temari. Naruto nervously asked. He was making sure he was out of her range if she decided to hit him, which he felt he had coming anyway. Although what he wasn't expecting was the silent treatment, she wasn't even looking at him and for a moment he thought she hadn't heard him. Temari. He said a bit louder. Oh come on, I'm sorry, it was a total accident. Still nothing, and now he was getting worried. Sure, he got her mad before. But before, she would always yell at him. This silent treatment was a lot worse. Naruto also knew that he really screwed up this time as well. He was about to say something when she threw an object at him. He flinched and prepared to guard just in case, but he saw the item on the ground in front of him. It was his headband. He grinned as he picked it up and put it on. Hey, thanks, Temari. He smiled at her, thinking everything was okay. But she just walked past him and his smile dropped. Yeah, she's still mad, Naruto thought. How the hell am I going to make up for this? Temari. Temari was still a little fuming over this morning. After all, how else could you react to? Well, what had happened? She crossed her arms co-consciously, remembering his hand on her breast. She had never let a boy touch her in that kind of way before, let alone seeing her naked. Her face burned up at that. Sure, it had been a shadow clone, but still she felt mortified. Plus she wasn't too sure, but Naruto kept blushing when he looked at her. She wasn't sure how shadow clones worked, but she was wondering if he knew what had happened. The fact he tried to apologize to her even more so meant he knew. At the moment she just wanted to keep her distance, to cool off at any rate. In a normal case, the offending boy, she would have had killed him for such a thing. But Naruto was going to be her husband and she was supposed to have at least one child, so of course being naked in front of him would have to happen. But not by surprising her in the shower like that. Plus she couldn't kill him, which would be bad for political reasons. That, and maybe, because lately she had grown to like him a bit. He had been the nicest person to her that she could remember, and she did enjoy spending time with him now and then too. He opened up with his big secret and she couldn't help but feel for him now. Every time she looked at him now, he reminded her of her brother in some ways. Plus he really was a sweet guy, and she could have done a lot worse for herself. She could have ended up in some loveless marriage, or maybe even have been killed before she ever got this far. Sure, she wasn't in love with him, but for the first time she was considering opening her heart to another. Naruto wouldn't be someone that would hurt her, at least on purpose, and despite his obvious flaws, she saw the potential in him. But that didn't mean she had to just forgive him right off the bat. Hell no, she was pissed and he would have to work his ass off to make this better. She stopped when she noticed that there was someone coming up to her. She narrowed her eyes slightly in study. He looked like he was an older man, but it was kind of hard to tell. His body, when not covered in that cloak, was covered in many bandages. He limped pretty badly and got around with a cane as well. But despite this, the way he walked, she could see the purpose and the years of shinobi training behind it. Obviously he was someone who had once been a ninja, but those days were long over. The man stopped in front of her almost as if he was gauging her. "Greetings, Temari. I am Danzo," he told her. "What can I do for you?" Temari asked him neutrally. She had heard mention of this man. Although not part of the council officially, he was supposed to have some major influence. Although beyond that, there wasn't much information they had found on him. "I'm just seeing how things are going," Danzo said. "The council just wants some assurances that there are no issues between you and Naruto. After all, this is a major event coming up for both our villages." Temari wasn't sure, but she thought she didn't like this man already. It wasn't that he was mean or nasty, in fact he was trying to come off as pretty neutral in all of this. But there was one thing that she first noticed: he reminded her of her father. The way he stood there and how he talked, it was like seeing a ghost of her dead father in this man. Just because of that, she felt her guard go up. Men like this she knew she had to be careful of. They would come off as harmless, but hidden was a threat you didn't want unleashed on you. Now she was quickly trying to see just how much of those injuries were real, and what could be just an act. Even if they weren't an act to put others at ease, that didn't mean he wasn't dangerous. "Things are going well," she told him. "Thank you for asking." Danzo gave her a long look, his face totally expressionless, but she could tell he wasn't pleased with her response. "Well, just remember what this marriage means. As a ninja you know what duty is, and I would hate to think that Suna sent us a ninja that couldn't or even wouldn't live up to the agreement." "Are you saying I'm not?" Temari said with a hint of anger. "I would never say such a thing," he told her. "I am just an old man making conversation. Besides, you seem like a ninja that knows what duty is. You also seem to be the kind that knows what happens to those that fail their duty." Temari knew a veiled threat when she heard it. This man was definitely like her father, cold and manipulative and extremely dangerous. She could see how such a man held power. He didn't come at you up front. No, he came at you sideways or from behind. She would have to remember to be on her guard at all times with this man. She also felt that being on his bad side could be unpleasant as well. "I know my duty, and the price of failure is due all Suna ninja," she told him, standing up straight. She could tell that any sign of weakness would be bad in this case. He was the type that could smell weakness and use it to his advantage. "Ah, but you're not a Suna ninja anymore, are you?" Danzo pointed out. "But at any rate, Your loyalty is to this village now, and I hope you remember that. Many eyes are on you, as you know how Suna already betrayed us once before. There are those that feel you can't be trusted. Temari knew that was coming, although she could hardly blame Konoha for any mistrust. They had broken the peace between them. There was no telling how many people had lost the lives of loved ones in that battle. I know the consequences if this alliance fails, Temari told him. I have no intention of putting Suna through a war with Konoha. Danzo seemed to consider her words. She wasn't saying that she was totally loyal to either village, but yet implying she wouldn't put her home at risk. Very well then. I can try and put the minds of the others at ease then. Danzo told her. He could help to smooth things over. Besides having her in his debt, even just a small one was worth having. I do hope that you are not disappointed in the match with Naruto. There was some debate on if you should actually be wed to him. Personally, I think he is perfect for this. Oh. This caught her off guard. She didn't expect him to approve of Naruto, not given his generation's attitude towards him. Oh yes, he's a very special case. In fact, I once petitioned the old Hokage to have the boy to be raised and trained, Danzo told her honestly. I could see the potential, but so much time was wasted. He could have been so much more than he is now, but I hear his progress has improved, thanks to some of your effort. He's surprising. Danzo nodded. Yes, and you are a very strong young woman too. I look forward to seeing the kind of children you two will have. Somehow I think it would be very interesting to see how they develop. Plus I can assure you that they will receive only the very best here, that is if you chose it. With that, Danzo turned and walked off, leaving Temari behind to think. She wasn't sure why, but she felt a cold pit in her stomach at the moment. This Danzo person had both flattered and threatened her both at the same time. She wasn't sure what he was after, but why did he mention children? Did he have plans for any future children she had, and he had mentioned wanting to train Naruto when he was younger. She suddenly got the impression he wanted to train her future children, and even though she had no plans at the moment to have children. But the thought of that man anywhere near her future kids made her feel afraid. She sighed. She should have known this was going to be a bad day for her since the shower incident. Chapter 14. Making up is hard to do. Naruto was not in a good mood, not even eating at his favorite place in the world was helping. It had been a couple of days, and even though Temari wasn't totally ignoring him, she was still angry with him. He had no idea of how to fix something like this. He hadn't been in a relationship before, but he tried. First he tried to make breakfast for her in bed. It was going well. That is until he opened the door while she had been changing. He hadn't seen anything, but she obviously thought he was a pervert now. He really just seemed to be having bad luck. He thought of flowers, so he got Ino's help in picking something nice with a meaning behind them that said how sorry he was. Turns out Temari was allergic to those types of flowers. She had been sneezing for hours with red puffy eyes and very annoyed with him for it. No matter what, it just seemed he kept messing up and he was seriously coming to the end of his rope. Another realization came to him in the past few days as well. He missed the things he did with Temari, the training they did together, how she would show him how to cook a few new dishes, how they would talk over meals and hang out. He even missed the dates too. Sure, they hadn't been together for that long. For someone like Naruto it was different though. He had lived alone and been alone for most of his life. To have someone in his life like this was better than he had thought. Now it was almost like how it was before and he hated it. The other thing he started to realize was that he was actually starting to like her. She didn't see him as the dead last, like most did. She actually saw something in him and tried to help him get stronger. Hell, he was stronger thanks to her, and he knew with her help he could get a lot stronger too. He also missed her smile. It happened only a few times, but it was a nice smile. He missed her laugh and how when they were alone she let her guard down a bit and was more relaxed. She was also the first person he had told his greatest secret to, and she accepted him for it. It felt so good to be accepted totally without hold that back. He wasn't sure when it had happened, but he knew now that he actually liked Temari. Sure, maybe not loved her, but she was one of his precious people and she was important to him now. He could definitely see himself eventually loving her, but at this rate not anytime soon, at least not until he could fix this. which led to him sitting depressed at the Ichiraku ramen stand. Instead of wolfing down the ramen like a starving man condemned to a death sentence, he was just slowly eating his food. Both Ayame and Chuki knew something was seriously wrong with the boy. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Ayame asked the boy that was like a little brother to her. Naruto gave a depressed sigh. I keep trying to make up for something with Temari and I keep screwing things up. Like what? Chuki asked, and when Naruto explained his attempts so far, both ramen stand workers flinched. Ouch. Yeah, I can see why I haven't seen you two together here then. Dad, that's not nice. Ayame scolded her father for his bluntness. Anyway, maybe you should try something new. I'm afraid to try, Naruto said honestly. What if he tried and it blew up in his face again? Before Ayame could say a response, the familiar voices of two girls were heard. I'm telling you, something is going on with Temari and Naruto. Forehead. Ino's voice could be heard. Look, Ino pig, I know there is something off, but is it really that bad? Sakura's voice was heard too. Well, let's see if he's here and we can ask him, Ino said as both girls entered the stand. Ah, there you are, Naruto. Oh man, you look like crap. Ino. Sakura shouted at her and then looked at Naruto. He looked even more depressed than the last time she had seen him. She sat down next to her teammate and friend. Naruto, is everything okay? Naruto sighed and his head hit the counter as a depressed groan came from him. He's having trouble making up with Temari, Ayame told the girls as it looked like Naruto was in no shape to tell them himself. By the end, both girls could see why Naruto was so depressed lately. The ideas had been good ones, but things just didn't go too well. Ino felt a bit bad with her choices of flowers. She hadn't known that Temari would be allergic to those types and felt bad in her part of it. Well, what got her so mad to begin with? Sakura asked, wondering how this all started. Naruto was about to say the reason until his survival instincts kicked in. She stiffened at the thought of what those two girls would do to him if they found out. Sakura hit pretty hard when mad, and he was sure Ino wasn't too far behind her either. He really didn't want both girls to think he had tried to take advantage of Temari or something. Also, if Temari found out he told anyone what had happened, if the girls didn't kill him, Temari would finish off what was left. It's kind of personal and embarrassing, Naruto blushed. It didn't help that ever since that incident sometimes he could catch himself staring at Temari when she wasn't looking. He could still remember what she looked like naked and the feel of her skin. Naruto, Sakura said in a slightly angry voice. She could sense something. She wasn't sure what, but something was making her pervert sense going off. Ino's eyes narrowed as well as she felt something behind that as well. Naruto quickly sat up straight as he began to panic. Look, it really is personal, and Temari wouldn't want me talking about it. Can't you help me out of this at least? Sakura and Ino shared a look. They decided they would drop this at least for now. Besides, for Ino, she had been helping Naruto with his bride-to-be. The hopeless romantic in her wanted to see the two blondes fall in love and have the happy ending that she always dreamed of having when she married. And it was no small wonder which dark-haired boy was the star in those fantasies either. Plus, how could she get Sasuke to be hers, if she couldn't help Naruto get the woman he was going to marry? Sakura just wanted to help her friend. Lately she and Naruto had gotten a lot closer. Maybe it was because he had stopped trying to gain her heart and had settled for just her friendship. She was actually glad to have Naruto as a friend lately, and she didn't like to see him like this. Plus, she was sure that Temari wasn't happy, and the older girl was someone she was starting to consider a friend as well. Well, there are a few things that you can do. Sakura started off as both she and Ino told him all the things a girl liked to get for gifts. They went into jewelry, clothing, chocolates as well. Then they went into things like taking her out to dinner or some kind of major date to make up for whatever he had done. The girls told him anything they could think of, and Naruto tried to keep it all straight. Okay, thanks, Naruto said after the lessons on what girls might like. I think I'll go and see what I can find. Later, Naruto, Sakura called out to him. I hope he finds something. Yeah, Ino said, nodding. Hey, how about we invite Temari out with the other girls? I mean, we hardly know her other than you, and I bet she must be a bit lonely in a village full of strangers. That sounds like a good idea, Sakura smiled at the thought. I'll ask her tomorrow. Later. Naruto wasn't sure what to do. Sure, Sakura and Ino had given him some ideas, but honestly, what was he to get Temari? So far, everything else had blown up in his face, and he didn't know anything like dress size or ring size for jewelry. Plus, he wasn't sure Temari even liked that stuff. She didn't really wear or have much of that stuff like jewelry. The only thing she carried around was her huge battle fan. He thought that maybe a new weapon would help him out. He paused at that thought. She didn't have anything for close combat other than the standard kunai and shuriken, but what if he could find something really cool for her to use? Naruto got a huge grin as he went looking for a weapons store. Ever since the Chunin exams, a few more stores had actually been kinder to him, so lately he had been experimenting with looking into new stores. Sure, the ones that had always accepted him were good, but he had been too afraid to shop around in fear of being kicked out. He soon found a weapons store that he had seen but never gone into before, mainly cause the weapons looked kind of expensive. But with all the new money he might be able to afford some new gear. In fact, he made a mental note to buy better quality equipment when he could. He walked in seeing a store filled with weapons. There were everything from swords to daggers, axes, which he thought was weird for ninja, and a few weapons he couldn't even name. Naruto looked through it all and was amazed at the things he saw. Sorry to keep you waiting, a female voice called out. I was in the back helping out, how can I? Naruto. Naruto looked at the counter to see a surprised Tenten there. Hey, do you work here? Yeah. Tenten smiled at seeing him. Well, I sometimes work here. When my team isn't on missions, I help out, and since Lee is still recovering, I have more time to spend here. How is he doing? Naruto wondered about Lee. He's doing great. Tenten beamed. Tsunade-sama healed him up and he'll continue being a ninja again. She's just the greatest there is. Yeah. Ba-chan is pretty great. Naruto. Tenten shouted suddenly. Don't call the Hokage that. Why not? Naruto asked her as if it was perfectly natural to call her that. I mean, she's 50 and hides behind that genjutsu of hers. Still, you should show some respect to her, Tenten muttered. She idolized Tsunade. She wanted to be a lot like her, and she just didn't know how Naruto managed to get away with that kind of stuff. She sighed and went to why he was here. So are you here for new weapons? Yeah, I was hoping you could help me out. Naruto then told her who he was looking a weapon for. He didn't go into major detail, just that he was looking for a present for Temari and a close-range weapon would be perfect for her. Tenten had to admit that to her. That was a very nice gift, but then again she thought any good weapon was a good gift. She thought about what type of weapons she had for someone like Temari, having first-hand knowledge of how the girl fought. Although she still felt embarrassed to how badly she had lost, she still was looking for ways to improve since then. So Tenten showed Naruto all the types of weapons that Temari might like and could use. At first Naruto wasn't sure what Temari would like and went with what Tenten showed him. Then he found something that caught his eye and asked Tenten to show him. She went into detail about the weapon, and already Naruto could tell that Temari would love it. The only downside was the cost. It was going to put a cramp in his savings and his wallet would take a major hit, but it would be worth it if this would work. In fact, if this didn't get him out of trouble, then he wasn't sure what was. Hokage Tower. Enko wasn't sure why she had been called into the tower, only that she was to report to room 218. This was odd because as far as she knew, that was part of the research part of the tower. A slim hope took hold that maybe Kakashi had come up with something for her seal. Ever since she had started to help Kakashi with this, she had been hoping for something to keep the curse seal in check. She hated when the seal acted up, like when she had certain nightmares or like in the Forest of Death. She had been so weak and helpless. She should be dead now, but only because Orochimaru, in some sick pleasure he got, left her alive. She started to think a bit more about Kakashi as well. She didn't really know him all that well. In fact, most of what she knew came from other sources like Guy, Kurenai and Asuma. Even then, they didn't know much, which left Anko a puzzle, and she hated puzzles. Mainly because she hated missing pieces, like her memories, and blank pieces of information only pissed her off, plus he was hard to figure out as well. You couldn't tell what he was thinking or feeling, since he not only wore a mask, but also seemed to mask his emotions too. It was a little irritating at times because she wasn't sure what was an act and what was real with the guy. But she did know one thing: he had earned his reputation. She once snuck a peek at his files that she was cleared to see, and she was surprised by what she saw. The list of moves and jutsus he knew was staggering, and then there was his mission success rate. It was better than her own success rate, and she hated not being on top in anything. Although as they talked about her seal, eventually they moved to other things as they spent some time together. She learned how he had actually stood up to Orochimaru while he had put that counter seal on Sasuke, that in her books either mean that Kakashi was very brace or really stupid. Maybe a bit of both, but then again she couldn't say any different about herself. She got to the room, and when she entered she found not only Kakashi leaning over a table, but she saw Jiraiya himself there as well. She had only seen him a few times and never really met the man, but she knew his reputation, or more like reputations if you counted his non-ninja exploits. Kakashi noticed her first and gave her that strange eye smile of his. "Hey there, Anko, there is something we want you to see." "Also, this is the young thing you've been hiding away with." Jiraiya gave a perverted grin at Anko. "You have good tastes, Kakashi. How would you like to a model for a new character I've been working on for a new book?" Jiraiya asked. Anko gave him a sultry look as she swayed her hips to Jiraiya. She moved like a snake towards the man whose face was masked with surprise but quickly turned to his most perverted grin. Kakashi blinked in surprise as well as he couldn't take his eye off her movements. He didn't know that Anko could move like that. "Well, I would have to say," Anko said in a husky voice, and then pulled out a kunai to the man's throat. "That if you don't keep your little brain out of this, I'll cut it off and give it to Tsunade-sama as a trophy." Point taken, point taken. Jiraiya moved slightly away and glared at Kakashi, who was chuckling. "So, what's all this?" Anko asked, looking at the table. On it were many different pieces of paper with many different designs on them. It took her a moment to see that they were all different seal designs. "We think we may have found a new stronger seal to use," Kakashi told her, pulling one sheet forward. Jiraiya nodded. "Yes, using Kakashi's previous method as a template, I've put my own knowledge into it. Now it should work a bit better, although this won't completely seal it, and if you ever did try to use the curse mark, this seal would be totally useless." "Hey, I'll take what I can get." Anko grinned at the image on the paper. She tried making sense of it, but it was way beyond her. She knew seals, but nothing this advanced, although something odd was about it. "Hey, how does this thing work exactly?" "A person sits in the center of the seal," Kakashi told her, pointing it out on the paper. "It's pretty much the same, only the design is more complex." "So I just sit in the center or what?" she asked, and noticed Kakashi got a little nervous for some reason. "Not exactly. You need to be naked as the seals are drawn onto your body." Jiraiya giggled. "What?" Anko turned to the old pervert and then Kakashi. "You don't have to be naked," Kakashi quickly said. "At least, not totally. I had to draw on the seal on Sasuke's upper body." Anko gave the masked man a hard look, not sure what to think about this. Sure, she was willing to put some kind of damn leash on this seal on her neck, but being topless as someone draws on her wasn't what she had in mind. Okay, so maybe that sounded fun in another context, but not in this. "Well, I would be more than happy to help out." Jiraiya grinned at her, only to be met by a fist to the face. He fell onto his back, holding his hands to his face. "Not likely," Anko said coldly. Then she looked at Kakashi and sighed. If this what it was going to take, she would have to do it, but she was going to get compensated for it. "Alright, Kakashi, just name the time and place, but if you're going to see me topless, then you'll have to do something for me to make it fair." "Like what?" Kakashi asked, wondering what she had in mind. "Now where is the fun in that?" Anko grinned at him and walked out the door, leaving both men to stare at the closed door. "My boy," Jiraiya said, slowly getting up. "I don't know if I envy you or not now." Although Jiraiya did know was that he seemed to have stumbled upon a new side story for his new book. If the things he caught Naruto and Temari doing helped out, then this little thing with Kakashi and Anko would be a nice companion piece to it. He was already thinking of all the things he could do with them, maybe the mysterious masked man and the snake charmer woman as characters. He quickly pulled out his notes and started to write these ideas down. Uzumaki home. Temari was not having a good day, actually make that a good week. First there was the shower incident, then that meeting with Danzo had put her on edge. Then there were Naruto's attempts to apologize, which ended up blowing up in her face. She was just thankful that she didn't get a rash from those flowers on top of everything else she got from them. She was currently thinking just forgiving him, since his making things up to her were turning out to be disasters. A part of her was actually afraid of what he would do next. She sighed as she went up to her room. So far it looked like Naruto wasn't home yet. That would give her time to unwind, and then she could think about just saying that things were fine between them and moving on. Besides, it had been a few days since the incident and she had cooled down since then. It was still embarrassing to just think about, but the rational part of her mind knew that sooner or later he would see her naked. That meeting with Danzo had started her thinking on things. She was expected to produce at least one child at some point, which meant that she and Naruto needed to get closer. At least things had been going well and he was a nice guy, at least he had never forced the issue of sex. She knew that a lesser man, if they had found her naked in that position, might not have pulled away. She crossed her arms across her chest at that thought. Being a ninja was a dangerous job, but a female ninja held other things to worry about. A captured kunoichi didn't just have torture to worry about for starters. At least with Naruto she knew that he would never force her into anything. She sat on her bed thinking about things. The wedding was coming up soon, and although she was comfortable around him, what did she feel for him? She started to list the things about him, both the good and the bad, and in the end the good points seemed to have won out. Logically she knew that he was a good match, and most likely would be a good husband and father one day. He liked kids, provided she made sure he didn't teach them anything perverted, and he was loyal and very honorable. But although her mind was made up, what did her heart say? It was then that she noticed a box on her dresser and she groaned. She really was worried what was inside of it. Might as well get it over with, Temari thought as she went up to open the box. It was a bit heavier than she thought for something that size. When she opened it up and was actually surprised by what she found. She pulled out a twin pair of fans. They were a good length, black with a yellow floral pattern on them. Temari was interested and opened one of the fans up. It was then she found out why they were so heavier than normal, as the fan was all metal. The edges looked razor sharp and the metal very durable. The metal glistened and she examined it closely. It was a very good quality. She noticed something else in the box, a small note that only read the word, "sorry," on it. She couldn't help but smirk. That was just like Naruto to write something so simple. She also noticed that there was something odd about the metal. It wasn't a normal metal. Having a similar fan for years, she knew metal that was made to conduct chakra by feel at this point. She took the two fans and quickly went down to the small training area in the backyard. Temari flicked her wrists and opened up the fans, testing the weight. They were excellently balanced, but it would take time to get used to them. She went into a few fluid movements with her fans and body. There were a few things she could do with these that she couldn't pull off with her larger fan. Her mind was already going through all the different types of things she could train in with these fans. She was a long-distance fighter, but her biggest weakness had been someone getting in closer to her. Now with these she had that covered. Temari never really got giddy, but she was as close as she could come with these. They were perfect for her. Now it was time to test the chakra, and with one fan she infused her wind chakra into it. She concentrated, feeling how the weapon took and molded it. It would take time to get used to that, but it felt right. Then when it felt right, she slashed out with her fan and released the chakra. A wave of condensed wind flew out to the target and left a scratch against the surface. Normally that kind of attack would cut it in half, but with time and training she could definitely use these. Okay. Apology accepted, Temari said, placing the fans in her belt as she turned around to see Naruto there. Why, you knew I was here? Naruto asked, a little nervous. At least for a few minutes, she smirked as she walked over to him. Were these your idea? Yeah. I was thinking what you would like, and when I saw them I figured you might. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Plus you told me that your fan wasn't good for close combat and these looked perfect for you. Temari smiled honestly as she looked at him, thinking back on her earlier thoughts. Okay, he wasn't drop-dead handsome, but he was cute and the whiskers looked nice on him. Naruto, can we go inside to talk about something? She asked him. He blinked in sudden confusion but nodded. They ended up on the couch sitting next to each other and she noticed how he seemed a little nervous. In fact, during the dates they had, he had been nervous around her when they were close at times. She should have known. He had been alone most of his life, so he wasn't used to close contact. Thinking about that made her feel sad about that. He didn't deserve that kind of loneliness. Naruto, as you know, there are a few expectations for our marriage. You mean that we're basically closing the deal on the new piece? Naruto asked her. Well, there is that, Temari said as a small blush started to form to where she was going. But in these kinds of marriages, to prove our commitment, a few things have to happen. One of them is that I have to have at least one child. Naruto swallowed nervously at that. I remember you saying something about kids a couple of times. Temari nodded. Yeah, that's because I knew we would have at least one, and remember, no perverted jutsus. She gave him a small glare for measure and he quickly nodded his head so fast, it looked like it would fall off. Satisfied, she decided to go on with her explanation. She told him about her run-in with Danzo. Naruto had no idea who that was, as he had never seen anyone like that before. He was confused to hear that this guy had wanted to take him in and train him at an early age. At first he would have liked that idea, but then Temari told him the other side of things, how the man reminded her of her father and the subtle threats he had given her. She could see the anger there and she was a bit pleased that he would want to protect her. Bastard isn't getting any kids from us, Naruto muttered, crossing his arms. He made a mental note to ask Tsunade about him the next time he saw her. So, we have to have a kid. Not yet, Temari told him. I don't plan on getting pregnant, at least until after I'm a chunin, and besides I think we're both a bit young. But there is a timetable for this, and eventually they'll push us into it. Naruto looked down at that. He didn't like the idea of Temari being forced to be with him, and the fact that she would be forced to have a kid with him made him feel even worse. He always had hoped he would find love and a normal marriage and family. I don't want you to do anything you don't want to, Naruto said a bit sadly. Temari looked at him and her expression softened as she gently took his hand. Naruto was surprised as he looked up at the other blonde. I know, you're a nice guy and well, lately I've been thinking about us. I know that I could have done a lot worse than you, in fact you're a good catch. Really? Temari nodded and Naruto blushed a bit at this. He looked down a bit and maybe for the first time he had some hope for a real marriage. Well, I wasn't sure at first, but I'm kind of glad you're going to be my wife too. Now it was Temari's turn to start blushing as well. Thanks, Temari told him. Although since we're going to be married, I've been thinking that we should try and get closer. I don't want us to be this awkward all the time, and then there is another thing that we are required to do. Oh, what? Naruto gave her that look when he closed his eyes, making him look more fox-like. Well, we will have to, the wedding night. She told him, blushing a lot more now. What happens on a wedding night? Naruto asked her and Temari nearly fell over from that. You mean you don't know? Temari asked and he shook his head. Temari sighed at this. She should have known that without parents he would be missing a few things, but this was not what she expected. Naruto. On the wedding night the couple consummate the marriage. Consummate what? Naruto asked. We have sex, Temari said, looking away to hide her huge blush, and Naruto had an equal one on his face at that. Naruto was starting to sweat at the thought of that night, but then again his mind went back to her naked form. The thought of him on top of her equally naked in bed made him feel all funny inside. He also noticed he was starting to get an erection and quickly tried to think of something else. He didn't want her to see that and think him some kind of pervert. So that's why you want us to try and be closer? Naruto asked nervously. Temari cleared her throat and nodded. Yes, I don't want us to be too embarrassed to do anything on that night. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. Naruto was glad the wedding was still 2 months away. Things were moving fast enough as they were. The last thing he needed to do was screw up a night like that. It was supposed to be important, but he had no idea what to do for that night. He started to wonder who he could ask for advice. He was too embarrassed to go to someone like Tsunade, plus she might punch him for being a pervert. There was no way he could ask one of the other girls for the same reason. Maybe he could ask Iruka, he might know, plus he wasn't a pervert like Jiraiya. I'm not saying we should just jump into things, but I think we should at least start off with something simple. She felt a little nervous with what she had thought of to try. Simple. Like this, Temari said as she moved slowly towards him. She didn't want to scare him off knowing how he was, so she planned to do this slowly. She felt herself being nervous and her heart was speeding up as her face slowly moved closer to Naruto's. She kept telling herself that this was nothing special, but for some reason she was still feeling nervous. After all, she had never done this before. Naruto felt himself blush as her face slowly got closer. He swallowed nervously as he looked to her lips. He licked his own as he slowly moved a bit forward. Both of them had never kissed before, at least not on the lips. Naruto didn't count Sasuke, but then their lips met. Naruto was surprised how soft her lips were and he closed his eyes. Temari did the same as they gently felt out the kiss. She wasn't sure what to do, but then instinct started to kick in and both started to kiss. Temari meant it just a slight one, but strangely found herself drawn into it, the kiss. She could taste ramen and something else in Naruto's kiss, and she should have known he would taste like it. Naruto found that her lips tasted of strawberries and he didn't know that kissing a girl felt his good. Both of them lost track of time, but a few seconds later they both pulled back blushing. That was good, Naruto stammered out. Temari nodded her head, feeling her heart racing at the moment. Both of them had started on this path to marriage as stranger, but over the short time together they had become friends and now had started to move into something more. Neither of them were sure of where things would lead, but for the first time, both of them were thinking that this marriage could be something that neither of them would regret. Chapter 15. Wedding Plans. Orochimaru was resting. He had been forced to change into a new body since Sasuke wasn't able to leave the village until that wedding for his teammate was done with. The new body would have to do. Although it was strong, it wasn't as strong as he had hoped. He was also starting on the enhancements to this new body as well, altering it to fit his needs. The bandages were to cover the surgeries that the body had been put through. They were standard by now, and every time he thought of new ways to improve the procedures. But there was another problem. He would need Sasuke at some point, and from the reports of the Sound 4 he seemed to be training with the curse mark. He had plenty of time to think now. While his new body recovered, it would be a few years before he needed to change hosts. Without the constant pain in his body, he finally could start thinking more clearly. In a few years Sasuke would be older and stronger. He had only gotten after him because he had gotten too excited. After all, with only 2 true Sharingan users left in the world, and his failure with Itachi, there had only been one person left. After he tested the boy out and seen his potential, he had marked him. He literally just couldn't wait. That had been a mistake, but the Sharingan had been so close after all these years. But he needed to be patient and smart now. Now he needed to be crafty and manipulative. He thought about the boy. It was obvious that he wanted power to kill his older brother. That was something he could use, but the boy would need to be pushed a bit more into his direction. There was also another problem, and that was the Sound 4. They couldn't wait forever in Konoha. Orochimaru knew all the secret ways in and out of the village and knew all about how Konoha trained their Anbu units. But they couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later they would be caught, and he couldn't have them caught. He would have to recall them for now, but he would have his people on the watch for Sasuke. Besides, he had a few plans on how to make sure that Sasuke joined him, but he needed more information first. Maybe when the boy started to leave the village on missions again, he could get him then. But at any rate he would watch and wait. Temari. It had been a few days since she had that talk with Naruto about their relationship, and they were making progress on it. They could hold hands and kiss every now and then. They were slowly getting used to being physical with each other. It was a little odd with him being shorter than her, and of course both weren't too sure what to even do in a relationship, but they were slowly making progress. Plus, despite everything, she found herself actually enjoying it. He was a quick learner and he could give really good kisses apparently. Sometimes she would catch herself just looking at him, watching him with his antics with Sasuke or someone. How hard he trained and the fierce determination he showed, he could be very passionate at those times. Although she did wish he would put a bit of that passion into their relationship. That was another thing. She had stopped thinking of this as the arrangement into a relationship. Why not? After all, they went on dates, lived and worked together. She saw him all the time and she liked being with him. She felt at ease with him around, and yet also she felt other things. Frustration when he was stubborn, she sighed when he was being stupid, smiled when he was acting all goofy, although she tried to hide it at times, and many other things. But she too it all, the bad with the good, and it just felt right with her. Although at the moment she wouldn't mind being with him at the moment, but she couldn't. This was mainly due to the fact that Sakura had asked her to hang out with her friends today. Temari knew she could have just said no, but in all honesty she was feeling a little isolated. Sure, she felt the same back home, but Konoha was still not totally her home yet. Plus Sakura wasn't all bad, she had potential, she just needed to get her fixation off the Uchiha and train seriously, and the girl could go far. The current extra training she did with the pink-haired girl was evidence of that, plus the girl was nice enough to her and it was hard to get people being nice to her. She didn't have many female friends if any back home because of her standing in Gaara. So she agreed to it, plus Naruto had been telling her she needed to make friends with all of his friends anyway, so this would get him off her back about it. He could be very annoying at times when he really wanted something to happen. So that was how she ended up sitting at a table with nothing but the other girls that Naruto knew. Temari already knew Sakura, and she knew Tenten, although not in the really friendly manner. After all, getting your ass handed to you in the Chunin exams wasn't the best way to leave an impression. But the girl seemed to be over it, so that was good. There was also the Ino girl that Sakura talked about. Temari wasn't sure, but the other blonde girl seemed just as bad as Sakura when it came to a certain Uchiha. Then finally there was the quiet mouse of a girl, Hinata Hyuga. She remembered her as well in the exams, fighting that older boy that she later learned was her own cousin. It was odd, back then he had nearly killed the girl, but now it would seem that was just water under the bridge. From what Naruto had said once, after he beat Neji he must have pounded some sense into the boy. He acted a lot nicer than he had before, although Temari had met him only a few times. If that was nicer, she wondered how bad had he been before. Apparently Naruto had another gift, to literally pound the sense into people. It worked with Neji and her brother at least. But at any rate she was starting to feel a bit more comfortable with the girls as they talked. They were at a nice little tea shop drinking at a table outside in the nice sunny weather. I can't believe that Naruto of all people is getting married, Ino sighed as they were in the middle of drinking their teas. I mean, I never thought he would be the first to get married. Oh, Temari said, not sure how to take that remark. Ino realized the tone of voice the older girl was using. I didn't mean anything by it, it's just that he was never that popular with girls, plus his crush with Sakura as well. That earned her a slight kick under the table from said pink-haired ninja. What? You know it's true, Ino said to Sakura. Well, I'm not going to be left out. As soon as Sasuke-kun is all mine, then I'll marry him as soon as I can. Fat chance of that happening. Sakura glared at her friend, rival who mirrored her back. Temari rolled her eyes and looked as the other two girls. Honestly, what the hell does everyone see in that Uchiha boy anyway? No idea, Tenten said with a shrug. She never really thought much of the Sasuke. Yes, he was a strong genin, but he just wasn't her type. It was like he looked down on everyone just because of what clan he came from. Plus the boy always seemed to have too much ego. Then again, she had only met him a few times. Sure, he was a pretty face, but she just didn't like his personality. Hinata just shrugged herself. She always felt intimidated by the last Uchiha clan member, to be honest. Well, he's handsome, Ino said, counting off with her fingers. He's from an established clan. He's got such a dark past with what happened. He's rich, powerful, he's cool, he's the strongest genin in the village too. I can debate that, Temari told her. What? You think you're better? Ino challenged. Not sure, but I know there is someone stronger, and that's Naruto, Temari said plainly. The entire table looked at her, shocked with surprise at this. Then Ino burst out laughing. Naruto had been the dead last at the academy. The thought of him being stronger than Sasuke, who was a prodigy and top genin of their class, was just too funny. Temari, however, didn't like the way the girl laughed at Naruto like that. Naruto. Ino finally managed to get out. Okay, I'll admit that he's gotten stronger. After all, I saw that mock with Neji and he really pulled out an upset win with that one. But come on. There's no way he's stronger than Sasuke-kun. Please, Temari said. I watched that fight he had with my brother after all hell broke loose. Everyone knows that it was Naruto that beat him. Hell, it's public record, I bet by now, as it's well known in my village. I saw your precious Uchiha fight my little brother and couldn't even scratch him. But Naruto, well, he never gave up. Temari relaxed a bit as she started to think back to that day. I've been in many battles and I've seen the kinds of terrible things my little brother can do. But that is a day I'll never forget. The things I saw in that fight I know I'll never see again. The kind of fight they had was something that you only hear in stories or legends. I remember my heart racing just watching them slug it out, and I'll admit. Back then I never thought much of him, but when I saw him fighting with everything he had, I saw that there was a lot more than meets the eye with him. Trust me, if you saw what I saw you wouldn't say those things about Naruto. Temari said, giving the girl a steeled look. Ino blinked a few times, not sure what to think about that. Temari looked very serious, but in her mind she just couldn't wrap her head around the fact that Naruto of all people was supposed to be stronger than Sasuke. And Naruto-kun has always been brave and strong, Hinata finally spoke up. She was glad that someone else saw what she saw in Naruto. Although she was still envious of Temari to be marrying Naruto. It still hurt how she now never had a chance with the boy that had captured her heart, but it was more manageable now. I haven't known him that long, but even I thought he didn't stand a chance against Neji, Tenten said, adding in her 2 cents. I mean, I've seen Neji in action and he had to go all out on Naruto, even resorting to rotation which he was saving up for later. Then when I thought he had lost, he comes out of nowhere and Neji is down for the count. Yeah, Temari chuckled at that. Never saw that coming, but it seems that's his specialty. You can never know what he's going to do next. She fingered one of her new smaller fans that were tucked at her waist. She smiled a bit as her finger glided over the gift. I don't know who is actually stronger, Sakura said softly. I wasn't awake during that fight, but Naruto has gotten a lot stronger, even more than I thought. It was something that Sakura had come to admit in recent weeks. Naruto had far surpassed her and was showing no signs of slowing down either. She felt like she was being left behind and had to work so hard to just keep them in sight. Sakura? Ino asked, shocked that her friend would admit to something like that. What makes you say something like that? You always hated him and said he was weak. Sakura actually flinched at that. She had started to feel bad about the way she had treated Naruto in the past. He was a good friend and she felt horrible about all the times she had been mean to him. I was wrong, she said, looking down at her teacup. And I never really hated him, he was just annoying at the time and I never let myself get the chance to get to know him. But after the Chunin exams, I guess I started to grow up and I don't think of him like that anymore. He's a really good friend who will always be there for you no matter what, and he is strong. Temari smiled at that. She wasn't sure how to feel about the girl hearing how she used to be. But people can change for the better, her brother was proof of that. It seems that Naruto changes everyone for the better. Temari thought to herself. He changed Neji apparently, he changed Gaara, and he changed Sakura. Maybe he's even doing the same to me. Well, how much stronger could he be? Tenten asked, getting a bit more curious now. Well, let's see. Temari leaned back thinking about it. He's already learned a powerful jutsu from Jiraiya the Toad Sage. The Rasengan, which was created by your 4th Hokage himself, and only like 3 people even know it in the world. He's also working on his wind nature manipulation and he's starting to make some progress. This progress of course was Naruto using clones to try and cut rocks up with his chakra. She had caught him using 10 clones with the rocks, and when she asked what he was doing, she was surprised by the answer. She had never heard of anyone training with shadow clones before. Although she didn't know the jutsu herself, there had to be a reason she had never heard of people training this way before. Ino, Tenten and Hinata sat there, surprise written on their faces. They hadn't known anything like that, but Hinata soon smiled knowing that Naruto had hidden strength and now it was showing through. She only hoped to one day match that. I've seen some of that too, Sakura said to the others just in case. Although I wish he had a different summons. He can summon too. Tenten hadn't known that. Frogs, Sakura groaned remembering how Naruto had called up a strange little red one in a blue vest. Actually, they're toads, Temari corrected. She had said the same thing and apparently the toad had took offense to it. At any rate, he's a lot stronger than you think. Well, sounds like it. Tenten had to admit that was an impressive list and a bit diverse. She was a weapons specialist, but she was starting to think maybe a little practice in another area wouldn't hurt as a backup. At any rate, what's he like? I mean, how are things going between you two? Temari blushed a bit and tried to keep a smile off her face, but a bit showed through. He's actually a really sweet guy. I could have done a hell of a lot worse than him. Sure, he needs a little work, but no man is perfect. Hopefully you can get him out of that orange suit, Ino sighed. God, how has he not been killed in that ugly thing? I have no idea. Temari rolled her eyes. Trust me, I've been trying, but he can be very stubborn at times. Hopefully I can slowly get him off so much orange, but I get the feeling he'll fight me on this one. Never did understand his fixation on that color, Sakura sighed. Hopefully you can, or at least get him something better. Maybe mix it in with a darker color at least. Well, how about the good stuff? Ino asked. Come on, girl. We need details. Have you two kissed yet, and is he a good kisser or a bad one? Temari flushed at that, seeing all pairs of eyes now glued to her. She could tell them it was none of their business, but for some reason she felt that maybe they should know exactly what Naruto was like. After all, they should know just what they missed out on. Alright, fine. He's a really good kisser and he's only getting better. Plus he gives the best foot and shoulder rubs. He rubs your shoulders and feet. Hinata blushed at the thought of such intimate contact with Naruto. She would have fainted if he tried to do something like that. At the same time too, Temari grinned at the memory. In fact, she kind of looked forward to those moments. She could just really relax at those times with Naruto. I'll admit he really uses shadow clones in inventive ways. The other girls were surprised by this, and maybe a slight bit jealous of the happy look on Temari's face. After all, she was the only one of them that actually had someone like that in her life. So then, how is the wedding plans going? Ino asked, trying to move the subject along. She hated long silences and needed something to break the moment. It's going, although a few details need working out, Temari said. Need to get a few things, like flowers for the damn thing. Well, my family owns a flower store, we could help with that, Ino said, glad to help out. After all, this wedding had been the talk of the town for a while now. Well, that's one thing out of the way. Temari mentally ticked that one off. Then she remembered something else she needed. Sakura, I need a maid of honor, would you like it? Me. Well, I don't have many female friends, she told her, but in truth she really didn't have any female friends. Sakura was the closest she had to a good enough friend for this. Plus she wasn't sure who else to ask for this. I would love to. Sakura's eyes nearly had stars in them at this. She would love to be a part of this. Already her mind was thinking of what dress to get and how to get her hair for the day. Ah, no fair. Ino said. Sorry, Ino pig, but she picked me. Sakura grinned at her friend. So you need any other things to help out? Tenten asked the older girl. I mean, we might as well help you out with planning this thing if you need it. We can't do everything, but we can at least do this since Naruto is our friend. Temari smiled, happy to have the help. Although the place was already picked out to be on top of the Hokage tower, she and all of that was being planned out. She still needed to think on a few things, like guests. So far the only people she was inviting was her family and her old sensei. Of course the Suna council would be there, as would all the important people in Konoha. But so far the ceremony wouldn't be totally traditional. Which was a good point, and there would be a few changes. Such as her making an oath of always obeying the husband. Like in some ceremonies, she liked Naruto, but in no way could she give up her pride for something like that. It would be a true partnership for their marriage and not one of submissive servitude. She snapped back as someone asked her a question on if she knew a place to get a good kimono. Underground area, Konoha. Anko had been told that the new ceiling preparations were complete and she couldn't wait. Although she was moving in the more secure areas, the older underground areas where she has stayed when they had found her and they had interrogated her. She was glad they didn't go through the physical torture part for missing nins, but still they had used all the tricks to break her down. She did break, of course, but she couldn't tell them what she didn't know. After a couple of weeks she was reinstated but given 2 weeks recovery leave. That had been a rough time for her, but she didn't blame them. Hell, a part of her had hoped they could have unlocked her mind with what she went through. All in all, she had gotten stronger from it, and now she was heading back into this place. The cold stone echoed with her footsteps and she found the room that Kakashi had told her to find. She opened up and looked inside. The place was dark with candles as the only light source, but she was interested in the designs that were all over the place. There was a complex one on the floor and many others that led from it going all over the place. Damn, Anko muttered at the level of detail that had to go into this. This had to take forever. Actually more like 5 hours, Kakashi said, stepping out from behind a pillar with some ink. He looked a little tired to her, and if he had been at this for 5 hours it was no wonder. So you think this will work? Anko asked, looking around. Well, it's a lot more advanced and complicated than the one I used on Sasuke, that's for sure, Kakashi said, looking around himself. But we won't know until we try. Anko sighed. Alright, let's get this over with. She removed her coat and laid it out off to the side. She was about to start with her mesh shirt but looked at Kakashi. Aren't you forgetting something? If I have to do this topless, then so are you. Kakashi rolled his visible eye and took off his jacket and then his long-sleeve shirt. He placed them off to the side only to see Anko watching her with a smirk on her face. Happy? Not yet. You forgot the mask. I'm not letting you see me nearly naked unless I get to see that face of yours. Kakashi paused for a moment and pulled off his mask. Honestly, what was it with people trying to see his face? Anko had been watching Kakashi take his shirt off and she had to admit he had a really nice body under all that clothing. You couldn't tell because it wasn't skin tight, but his body was slim but athletic, kind of like a swimmer's body. All lean and powerful like a cat. She noticed the Anbu tattoo on his shoulder, and the little scars from the trade as well. Then he removed his mask and her brain shut down for a moment. She was amazed by what she saw. He was without a doubt one of the most handsome men she had ever seen. His face was perfect, strong jawline, the perfect mouth and features. Even the scar on her face that she could see seemed to fit with his face. She couldn't understand why he chose to hide a face like that from the world. Then again, if all the women in the village could see that face, he wouldn't get a moment's peace. She wasn't even aware of her cheeks burning slightly from her staring at him. Anko? Kakashi asked, snapping her out of it. She felt embarrassed that he had caught her gawking like some stupid teenager. She turned around to hide her face and to compose herself. She berated herself for acting like that and for being caught. She was a professional and here she was acting like this. Kakashi watched her reaction with interest. He never did see why women acted like that when they saw his face. One of the reasons he kept his mask up all the time. He watched her remove her mesh shirt, leaving her in a bra. He couldn't help but look at her back. He noticed a couple of little scars, but otherwise her skin was flawless. Then she slowly took off her bra and Kakashi suddenly felt his heart rate increase a bit. He suddenly started to become painfully aware of just how long it had been since he had been with a woman. He had a few flings but nothing major. He didn't try to form bonds for the longest time. After his teammates and best friends died and then his sensei, he had lost everyone and retreated into himself. It was a long time before he had opened up again, but still he kept any sexual relationships to a minimum. Usually when he was out of the village after a mission was completed, so there would be no attachments, but that had been a very long time ago. Being with his genin team didn't really leave lots of free time like it used to. Then Anko turned around and he couldn't help but look. Her stomach was flat and slim, her breasts were very nice as well. Not overly large like Tsunade, but they were a handful. They looked a bit firm and supple, but he couldn't tell unless he could feel them. He quickly recovered and led Anko to the center of the circle where he started to apply the last of the special ink. Anko shivered a bit. It was cold down here and the ink was cold as well. She tried to focus on something else, but it was boring and she hated being bored. So, seen any interesting movies lately? It sounded even more lame coming out of her mouth than in her head. Kakashi chuckled, knowing what she was doing. He didn't mind the conversation. Not lately. Been very busy with my new team, plus the Ika Ika movie is still being made. They haven't picked a main star yet either. You really do like those books, huh? Of course. They're full of action, drama, suspense. Porn. She supplied. Well, there are certain adult scenes, yes. Any 3 ways. Kakashi blinked. A couple, why? Then it's porn and not adult scenes, as you put it. Besides, how many times does that actually happen in real life? She asked him, smirking. I'll admit that it's unlikely, but then again, it is fiction, Kakashi told her as he started on the symbols going down her spine. You know, we've worked together a few times, but we haven't really ever talked before this, have we? Anko thought about it. Before he came to her about the new seal idea of his, they hardly ever interacted. No, not really. Why is that? Kakashi shrugged, even though she couldn't see it. Not sure myself. I think this is the most we've spoken outside of a mission. You know, I don't even know what you like other than dango and scaring little Genins. She looked over her shoulder and grinned at him. Was a certain little blonde Genin talking about me? Kakashi chuckled. Oh yes, he ranted about a crazy proctor lady once. You certainly left an impression on him. Anko laughed at that. Well, then maybe I should crash his wedding and surprise him. Although I doubt that would go over well with everyone there. I could invite you if you want. Really? She was surprised at that. Of course, I am his sensei and I could ask to bring a few friends, he told her, smiling, and she could see how he smiled without the mask for once. He did close his eye, but the smile he had was a very nice one. She quickly turned her face forward before she blushed again. So, we're friends now? She asked. Kakashi paused. We are, if you'd like. Besides, I don't have any female friends that would let me draw on them naked. Anko wanted to smack his arm for that one, but she knew she couldn't move. Oh, I'll get you for that one, Hataki, but her voice held no malice in it. And for the record, I don't just let any friend do this. Then I'm honored. You better be. Anko smiled. He chuckled as he continued on drawing on her. They continued to talk and they were surprised how easy it was to talk to one another. Kakashi was surprised when he found out that her hobby was tea ceremonies. He never thought of her to be into something like that, but she apparently knew a lot about it. She learned that he had a few hobbies other than his books, and laughed when she heard that one of them was getting under guys' skin. They both tried to continue on when Kakashi moved to her front, but it wasn't that easy. Anko had to admit that it was all kind of erotic and was glad that the cold was why her nipples were hard. The last thing she needed was for Kakashi to think she was turned on by all of this. Although she couldn't help but stare at his body and face now and then. He was a very good specimen of the male species, and it had been a long time since she got herself laid. You can only go so long without sex, and only a certain amount of things you could do to take your mind off it. It certainly didn't help to have a hot man doing what he was doing on her skin. She just tried to focus her mind off things. Little did she know that Kakashi was having the same problem as her. Drawing the symbols on her front was very distracting, especially when he got to her breasts. He just hoped that he could get through this. He already was trying to think of other things so he wouldn't get an erection. Guy in a swimsuit usually worked to ruin the mood, but it was torture at any rate. By the time he was done, both of them were glad for it. Okay, here comes the hard part. Kakashi said, getting behind her. It's going to hurt, isn't it? Anko said, as more of a statement than a question, as she steeled herself. Well, Sasuke did pass out, he warned her. Please, like I'm some rookie genin. Anko felt a bit insulted by the comparison. True, but this is a more complex one, so I have no idea what the effect will be on both of us, he told her, going through the hand seals. There was no more talking as Anko got ready for it. Then she felt his hand on her curse mark, and suddenly it was like every nerve in her body was on fire. She gritted her teeth, not wanting to cry out from the pain, but it was almost as bad as when she first got the mark. She didn't feel her nails digging into the palms of her hands or notice anything else. All there was the burning pain. She heard a scream, not knowing it was her own voice, and then the world went black. Naruto. It was mid-afternoon and Naruto was making his way to the academy again to see Iruka. He had been thinking about a few things lately and he was hoping he could catch Iruka before he left for the day. He wasn't sure how long the talk would be, so he figured after classes would work. Besides, he knew that Iruka stayed behind a bit to do some work after classes, so it was a good chance he was there. By the time he got inside the school, it was all quiet. Everyone seemed to be gone for the day. He looked inside his old classroom and smiled seeing Iruka there at his desk grading some papers by the looks of it. "Hey Iruka-sensei," Naruto said walking into the room. "Naruto, how are things?" Iruka asked, glad to see his favorite student. He could use the break anyway, plus he didn't get much time to see Naruto anymore. "Things are going great," Naruto said sitting across from him in an empty chair. "But there are a few things that I've been wanting to ask you." "Oh, you know you can come to me about anything," Iruka said to the boy. Naruto smiled a bit as he heard that. It was one of the few constancies in life that he could always turn to Iruka. "Well, I was told I need a best man and I was hoping you would do it for me." He asked him, a little embarrassed to bring this up. Iruka blinked and then smiled at the boy. "Naruto, it would be my honor." "I'm surprised you didn't ask anyone else though." Sasuke said no. Naruto muttered. He had asked him earlier in the week, but the boy was being a pain lately. "Plus, if you couldn't do it, I was going to ask Fuzzy Brows next." "Bushy Brows?" Iruka asked, confused. "Lee." Naruto clarified. Next to Sasuke, it was Lee he felt he could relate to the most. Sure, the guy was a little weird, but he liked him. He worked hard in life and Naruto could respect that. "Well then, I'm glad you asked me," Iruka told him. "So what's the second part? Can you help me with understanding something? I mean, I could use some advice," Naruto said, blushing at this point. After he learned what consummate meant, he knew he would need to learn a bit more about sex. After all, he knew the basics, but honestly, what were you supposed to do with a girl beyond that? Was there anything important he should do or not do? There were so many things he didn't know about it. "Well, what's the subject?" Iruka knew that Naruto had problems with paying attention in class. It had been a struggle to keep him seated and paying attention all those years. But the boy had turned out really well since he left, but if there was anything he could do to help, then he would. After all, that's why he became a teacher to begin with. What can you tell me about sex? Naruto finally asked. Iruka paled, as that was a question he never thought he would have to get into. Of all the things he had to ask, why did he have to ask him that? Iruka felt that this was going to be a very long and awkward talk. Chapter 16. Intimacies. Iruka had been trying to tell Naruto about sex, but it was just hard. This was why he had someone else teach the kids about sex, he just couldn't do it. It was embarrassing for him to try and explain things to Naruto, who had no real idea to begin with. He had tried to explain the differences in men and women, although Naruto already knew the basics of that, thankfully. He didn't want to know how Naruto knew. He had seen that sexy jutsu enough to know that Naruto knew enough on the outside of a woman. "Now Naruto," Iruka asked as he tried to explain a bit more. "During sex, it's important to get the woman, warmed up." "You mean they're cold?" Naruto asked, which didn't make sense, as when he touched Temari she was very warm. But then maybe that was because she had just had a hot shower. "No, not like that," the teacher sighed. "I mean, they need to be ready first before you put your into her. I need to get her ready." Naruto just wasn't sure what Iruka was getting at. "You need to touch her breasts and stuff. Women had certain places where they feel pleasure, and if you do it enough, they get wet." "Wet?" Naruto blinked. "You mean like they sweat?" "No. Well, yes, that can happen to when both of you get worked up. I mean, they get wet down there." He pointed downwards. When he saw Naruto blinked in confusion, Iruka just sighed. Why did Naruto have to come to him about this? He was just too nervous for this, but he would try his best. An hour later, Naruto came walking out of the academy, even more confused going in. Iruka always seemed to know a lot about everything, but apparently with women he didn't know as much as Naruto had hoped. So now he was totally lost on the subject. He was trying to think of who else to go to, but honestly the only real option seemed to be Tsunade, but that just seemed weird. She was like a grandmother, sister to him, or at least the closet he had to it. But it would seem that fate, not that he believed in it, had something else in store for him. As luck would have it, Jiraiya had been in the area. He had just finished up some research at the hot springs and was already making notes on the next installment of his book when he saw his favorite genin in the world. Well, wonder where Naruto is going, Jiraiya thought to himself, and then noticed something else. Huh. Kid looks a little down about something. Wonder if he pissed off his girl again. Well, might as well see what is going on. Jiraiya managed to catch up with the boy easily enough. Hey Naruto. Oh hey Ero Sennin. Naruto said to the older man. I wish you'd stop it with that already, the older man grumbled. Anyways, what's going on? You look a little down. Everything going well with Temari? Yeah, the boy told him. I just went to ask Iruka-sensei about something but he didn't seem to know much about it. Oh, well then maybe I can help. I know he's a good teacher but honestly I've been around a lot longer and picked up on a lot of things. Oh no way. Naruto said suddenly. I don't need your perverted advice. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Jiraiya was a bit lost on that. Why would the kid think he would give perverted advice? What kind of advice were you looking for anyway? I told you already I don't want any perverted advice. Naruto crossed his arms. The old man thought about it for a moment and then it clicked as he got on a wicked grin. Oh, is this advice on women? Naruto blushed as he didn't answer. Kid, do you have any idea how that makes no sense to come to me for advice on women? Jiraiya told him. Besides, I know more about women than most any man. There are hundreds of things I could tell you that you need to know. Besides, in this case the perverted answers are the best ones. Naruto thought about it for a moment. It was really more on instinct that he avoided Jiraiya's advice on this subject. If I give this a shot, will you keep it from being too perverted? Sure kid, I'll do my best. So what's the first thing you want to know? The Toad Sage asked his apprentice. Well, Iruka said something about getting a woman ready and that they get wet. What does that mean? Naruto asked, wondering if the old man would really answer him or not. Oh, that's easy. The old man grinned. See, before you put your penis into her you need to make sure she's lubricated, or else it will hurt her. Now they get wet, as it's called, by making them feel pleasure. You can do this through kissing, stroking, caressing and a few other things we'll get into later. The main point is to try and find her erogenous zones. Her, what? Naruto asked, confused about the word. Sensitive areas, he explained. Places like breasts, nipples, her vagina are the good areas. Some women like to be touched or kissed on the neck too, and don't forget her clit. What's a clit? Naruto never heard of some of this before. Apparently the man really did know more about a woman than Iruka. Jiraiya stared at the boy almost in shock. The boy had never heard of the clit. He sighed as he suddenly realized that Naruto had a huge hole in his knowledge about women. Well, as his apprentice it was up to him to train Naruto in the ways of pleasuring a woman. After all, he had many years of practice and experience to give the boy and he would need it for his wedding night. He held back a perverted giggle. If all went well, that girl wouldn't know what hit her that night. He wondered if he could listen in or find a nice open window. After all, they were the stars of his new book. Well, looks like we'll have a lot to talk about, Naruto. Now here's the thing you should know first. Elsewhere. When Anko woke up, she was staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. She blinked a few times and although her body ached, it wasn't too bad. She looked around to see that she was no longer in the underground facility but in what looked like an apartment bedroom. It was pretty neat and orderly and didn't seem to have much in the way of personal items. It kind of reminded her of her own room actually. But the place was different, so it wasn't her place. She looked to see that she was dressed again and laying in a bed. So she pulled back the covers and swung her feet to the side. Her boats and shin guards were gone. Anko looked around and saw them and her coat neatly placed on a chair. She was starting to wonder where she was when she noticed a couple of pictures. She moved to the bookcase and looked at them. There was one with a boy in goggles, a girl with marks on her cheeks, apparently the fourth Hokage, which was a surprise as there weren't many pictures of him, and a masked kid with familiar silver hair. The next picture was of Team 7 before Temari joined up and she was now certain she was in Kakashi's place. She heard a sound from the other room and went to take a look. It was a modest apartment much like her own, and there in the kitchen, dining room area was Kakashi making tea. He was without his jacket but the mask was back on. She was surprised how disappointed that made her but quickly coughed to get his attention. Oh good, you're awake. Kakashi smiled at her. Yep. So why am I here anyway? Anko asked him more out of curiosity. You passed out, Kakashi said simply, and Anko winced at that. She really wished she hadn't passed out, it just made her look weak and she hated to look weak. I got Tsunade to check on you after the sealing and she said that you just needed rest. So I put you into bed since I doubt the cold stone floor would have been good. Enko thought about that for a moment and she realized something. She didn't ask why I was nearly naked and passed out. Enko asked. Oh, that, Kakashi said, and she actually thought he was blushing. She thought it was kind of cute. And how knew that the man that read Jiraiya's books in public could get embarrassed? Well, I had to dress you after I recovered. I didn't want you to look vulnerable. Enko thought about it for a moment and decided to forgive anything he had to have touched on her body to get her dressed. He took the time to make sure she was presentable, even unconscious to the Hokage of all people, so she was grateful for that. Wait, what do you mean recovered? Apparently it took a bit out of me as well, Kakashi said, rubbing the back of his head. I had to put in a large amount of chakra for that thing. I couldn't really move for the first minute after it. Oh. Well, thanks, Enko said to him. She hadn't thought about if it would affect him as well, but apparently the new ceiling took a lot of chakra from him. So why did you take me to your place? Enko asked him. He scratched the back of his head. Well, I didn't think you needed to go to the hospital and also to avoid filling out the paperwork for that. Also, I didn't know where you lived and it was hard enough trying to sneak you here without anyone seeing me haul an unconscious woman into my place. That kind of image could give me a very bad reputation. Enko couldn't help but laugh at that. If anyone saw him, they would think he was drugging women and taking them to his home for perverted reasons. Kakashi offered to make some tea which she could use at the moment. After sitting down as she waited for the tea to get ready, she took the time to really look around the place. It didn't have any pictures, but she did notice a few landscape paintings, a TV, the usual furniture, and she saw a few personal items. It was all pretty neat and organized as well. When the tea came, she was glad for it. She was thirsty and she loved tea. This, however, wasn't good tea, as she made a face drinking it. What is this supposed to be? Kakashi blinked in surprise. The package said green tea. Enko blinked. You're not using actual leaves but that store-bought crap, aren't you? She sighed, shaking her head. Honestly, I should get you to drink a few of the stuff I have. Nothing beats actual tea leaves. After she forced the stuff down and making a mental note to get Kakashi turned to real tea, they got to working on her seal. The main test was to see how the seal held up with emotional strain. Enko was in the middle of his apartment as he was ready to help in any way if he was needed. Enko closed her eyes and brought up the memories of what usually triggered the mark. She thought of Orochimaru and all the things he had done to her, her missing memories, the pain and suffering she had endured because of him. She brought out all her hatred for him and drawing on anything she could. Then she felt a slight pain in her shoulder as she grunted in surprise and touched the mark. Are you okay? Kakashi asked, moving towards her, afraid it hadn't worked. Enko blinked a bit as she thought about it. It had hurt, but instead of the blinking pain that caused her body to freeze up, it was more like a pulled muscle. It was just this dull aching now as she slowly looked at her mark. She could see the ring of tiny seals around the mark, but it was holding. She tried it again and she felt the dull aching pain, but it was nowhere near the pain she usually felt. It had worked. The pain was manageable now. If it ever flared up again, she could easily deal with it. Enko felt happier than she could ever remember. She felt like a weight had been lifted from her after all these years. She just felt like celebrating. She wanted to go out and run happily all over the place, shouting her joy to the world. She did the next best thing as she jumped onto Kakashi, looping her arms around his neck. He was surprised as he managed to grab her thighs to prevent her from falling. Oh Kami, you have no idea how happy this makes me, thank you. Enko smiled at him. Kakashi couldn't help but smile back. She really did look happy, and despite everything he was glad how things went. Enko knew she owed Kakashi for this. From now on she didn't have to worry when or if her mark would flare up. Every time she went on a mission she could do it without the worry of it getting in the way. She might even start to train a little harder now, maybe without it interfering. At times she could finally get to full Jonin rank even. Maybe she could even get into Anbu. After all, that damn mark had a way of slowing down her training. She always had to be careful because if she pushed too hard, it flared whenever she was weak and then tried to push for more. It was hard to push yourself to your limits when that happened. Now maybe she could finally see what she was truly capable of. She also suddenly realized the position she was in. She knew that this wasn't exactly the most modest position, but then modesty wasn't an issue with her. She could feel his nice hard peaks rubbing up against her chest and his strong hands on her body. She couldn't help but remember that face he hid in the body under all that clothing. Maybe she was just running on endorphins or the fact that she hadn't had sex in months, but at the moment she decided to throw all caution to the wind. She wanted to celebrate, and so she made a choice. Before Kakashi knew it, she pulled down his mask, and before he could ask her what she was doing, her mouth was on his. At first he wasn't sure what was going on, but he was starting to become painfully aware of how good her body was pressed up against him like this. He could smell her scent, with his enhanced sense of smell, and she smelled so alluring at the moment. His hands gripped her thighs a little as his body decided to move on its own, and he kissed her back. He hadn't had a woman in a long time and he never thought of it before today, but she was a very sexy woman. The kiss was passionate and he felt her tongue tracing his lips, asking for entry. He opened his mouth as her tongue went in as his own met hers. He felt her moan into his mouth as his legs locked around his waist. Before he knew it, he had her pressed up against a wall, her hands roaming his body, digging into his hair as he tasted her. It was like liquid fire kissing her. His blood was hot and he felt alive in a way he hadn't felt since his first time. What are we doing? He managed to get out while kissing her. I thought, oh, that feels good there. Anyone who reads those books would know. Anko then moaned as he kissed her neck in a certain spot. You know what I mean, he told her. A part of him wanted to stop, but honestly it just felt too good. Images of her naked torso ran in his mind and he found that he wanted to rip that shirt off her. He wanted to touch them, kiss them, and do all kinds of things to her and her body. I'm not sure. I just felt like doing it, so I did it, Anko told him honestly. That's what she did. She did things when she felt like doing them, not really bothering to think them through all the time. She liked to enjoy life, and she was certainly enjoying herself now. She grinded her hips against his and she could feel something hardening in his pants that was pressing against her. She smirked as she felt that he was starting to enjoy it as well. Don't you think it's a little fast? He groaned into her neck, feeling her hips grind against his crotch. Don't care. I need this and I think you do too. She then kissed him deeply. She had never felt anything like this before. He was a really good kisser. Then she felt his hand on her ass as he gently massaged it, making her groan. She needed him now and then. Fuck, just give me a second. He let her down, panting heavily as he watched her. Her face was all flushed as she hiked up her skirt and pulled down the mesh shorts she wore. Many thought it was just a fully body suit, but that made no sense. How was she to go to the bathroom in a full body suit? It made her laugh at times, the things people thought about. She kicked them away as she jumped back up to him, capturing him in a deep kiss again. Take me now, she breathed into his ear. He took her against the wall as they rutted with each other in an animal lust. It had been a long time for either of them and their bodies yearned for the touch of another. It was like they were getting drunk off each other as they continued on, filling the place with the sounds of sex until the end. Well, that was a good first round, she told him, panting for breath. First round? Kakashi asked, surprised. I haven't gotten any in a long time and I'm going to make this worth it. You go get more comfortable on the bed, I'll be right back, she said sultry to him. Going where? He asked. She looked over her shoulder and smiled. First I need to get my clothing off and to freshen up. Plus I need to prepare for the next round. Kakashi stood there transfixed as she walked away and noticed the sway of her hips, and a very nice figure too. Without that coat on she really had a nice body. He wasn't sure what was going on, but hell, he needed this just as much as her. Then he went to the bedroom, taking off his clothing. Kakashi was laying on his bed wondering if he should stop things or not. After the blood was going back to his big brain, he could start to think again. He was trying to weigh the pros and cons to going on with this, but the damn thing was that although it had been fast, it had been pretty good. Oh Kakashi, a sultry voice said as a bare leg came into view from the bathroom door. It slowly went up and down on the side of the opening and Kakashi's thoughts were blanked out again. Anko slowly came out in her naked glory and Kakashi drank in the sight. He had seen her topless, but seeing her entire body was even better. She had her hair down and it was the first time he had seen this. It looked really nice on her. He watched as Anko crawled onto the bed from his feet and worked herself up. Sometime later, Anko fell onto Kakashi's chest to catch her breath. Both of them needed a break and were covered in sweat. Her body felt a bit sensitive and it felt nice to rub up against his muscled body at the moment. Kakashi wrapped his strong arms around her and Anko sighed. It felt nice to just be held. Usually it was just sex and then she or the other guy was gone. She never really tried to cuddle before and was surprised that it felt nice. After a few moments of enjoying the silence, Kakashi decided to break it. So, what was that all about, do you think? Not sure myself, Anko said, trailing her fingers over his muscles. I just felt like doing it. So, what does that make us? He asked, trying to think what this meant for them. Were they a couple now, or was this just a one-time thing? I don't know honestly. Anko wasn't sure if she wanted something more. A relationship could just complicate things, plus she had never had a stable one to begin with. She thought about this. She did like hanging out with Kakashi as he was easygoing. Plus she had to admit the sex was very good and she wouldn't mind access to that, but were they ready for a relationship? Kakashi was thinking along the same lines. He wasn't sure of what he felt for her. Maybe he did like her, but was it enough? That was the question. It was Anko that spoke up. Maybe we're just overcomplicating things. Maybe we can still be friends but still get what we both obviously need now and then. Kakashi blinked as what she said started to register in his mind. You mean friends with benefits? Why not? She asked him, totally serious. Look, we're human and we both need certain releases now and then. You're a good guy and I trust you with this. Besides, I'm not sure I'm ready for a relationship, to be honest, at least not yet. I have to say the same, Kakashi sighed as a hand caressed her back. Thinking on it, it did make sense and it would make things so much easier. They could still be friends and still have sex without complicating things. I think we could try it out. I mean, what's the harm? Anko looked up at him and smiled. Can't see any harm, unless you're into that type of thing. She said in a husky voice. So, you ready for round 3? He answered by flipping her onto her back and attacking her neck with his mouth, making her squeal in delight. Uzumaki home. Temari had one hell of a day so far. After the girls got together, she had to do more work on the wedding. Finding a good komodo for her wedding wasn't easy. She wanted something decent and yet something she loved. After all, this was still her wedding day and she still wanted to look her best for it. It wasn't easy, but she found one. It needed to be refitted for her so she would pick it up when it was ready. But it had been a very long day and she was looking forward to a nice hot water soak. That small inside onsen was a godsend to her life. Maybe they could increase its size later on. In fact, she was starting to think of many things they could do over the years to improve their home. It was then that she stopped as she suddenly realized that it was the first time she started to think of his place as home. She smirked as she shook her head. It had only been a matter of time, but still it was a nice place to live. She noticed Naruto was home with his shoes and coat hung up. She was glad he finally remembered to do that without her telling him nearly every day. Naruto. She called out as she heard someone upstairs. Temari. Naruto said, coming down the stairs. Hey, how was the day with the girls? Temari shrugged. Wasn't bad. It is nice to finally get to have some female friends for once. But I need to relax. All this planning for the wedding is starting to stress me out a bit. Oh. Naruto hadn't really thought about it all that much, but then again he didn't have much to do. He felt a bit bad about that, but he had no clue what to do with a wedding. Then he thought about some of the things Jiraiya told him. All of it wasn't perverted like he thought. He had some advice on a few things to do and not to do, as well as the more intimate stuff. He fought off the blush at how in-depth the old pervert was. He had no idea there was so much things to know about the female body. At least now he knew what those pad things and white sticks he found in the bathroom were and why she seemed so embarrassed he found them. He pushed those thoughts aside as the thought of what they were used for made him feel a little ill. You want some company? He asked, a little nervous. Temari paused as she thought about it. She sure could use one of his shoulder rubs, plus she was working on their physical intimacy. She told him to get ready as she went to her room to get her bathing suit for it. Naruto waited a little nervous in the water. When he heard the sliding door open, he looked and gulped. There was Temari in that two-piece and throwing a towel down. He couldn't help but watch her walk as images of what she looked like naked came back into his mind. He pushed them away as she settled into the water. He saw her blush a bit as she slowly moved closer to him, her back facing him. He started to rub her soft skin, knowing what she liked and didn't like by now. He went in gentle and slow with his motions. Temari had to bite back a moan as she felt his hands go to work. She closed her eyes as she lost herself in the hot water and the pleasure her body was getting. Eventually she moved to be sitting between his legs as her back was nearly against him. Naruto was starting to enjoy this and decided to try something new. He leaned down and started to kiss her neck. Temari gasped when she felt his lips on her skin. She had to admit the boy was getting more bolder, it would seem. She leaned back, feeling his body pressed against hers as he kept on kissing her. She blushed at feeling so much of her skin against the skin of a boy, kind of thrilling in a way actually. She felt his hands trailing her arms and she was tempted to ask where he was learning this stuff. Naruto was enjoying himself a lot. He was beginning to see what Jiraiya meant by how fun it was with a woman. He was starting to wonder just how far he could push things. His perverted teacher did say that sometimes you had to push the limits. So with one hand he placed it on her thigh. She tensed up but didn't say anything. She quickly relaxed and Naruto slowly started to caress her thigh. Now Temari did moan. At first she was going to ask him what he was doing, but she changed her mind. She wanted to explore a bit herself. She accidentally made her ass grind up against his crotch and heard him moan for once. She smirked as it was about time she managed to get him to moan out. There was no way that she would let him be the only one to get away with making her moan out. So she decided to return the favor as she turned around and straddled the boy. He then blushed bright red at this and she had to admit he looked very cute like that. She gently ran a couple of fingers over the whisker marks on his cheeks. They stared at each other's eyes for a moment before she moved closer and kissed him deeply. It was a very heated kiss and she found that she liked the passion in it. His tongue would trail over her lips asking permission to enter her mouth. So she opened her mouth a bit and his tongue went in, her own tongue went to meet his. It was then that she noticed that she was now grinding herself against something very hard. Naruto groaned against as his hands ran over her smooth back. Every time she moved her hips that way it sent pleasure coursing through him. He thought that Jiraiya had mentioned something like this, when a girl would grind her sex against yours. He forgot the name for it as it was kind of hard to think. He liked how her hands were caressing his body too. Then she started to kiss his neck and then she did something surprising. She nibbled on his ear lobe and it sent a shiver through him. The two teens were getting hotter as they continued on, but Temari suddenly pulled away gasping for breath. "Oh Kami," she breathed out. "Damn. Naruto, I think we need to stop. I don't know how much more I can take and I don't think I'm ready to move on, at least not yet." She hoped that he would understand, but damn, she was tempted to go on. She never felt so worked up like this before. It was amazing how one day Naruto seemed to have picked up some new tricks. Naruto nodded his head thinking about it. Although there was a nasty pressure in his groin that he might have to take care later, he wasn't sure he was ready for that too. So they just sat there with her head resting on his shoulder as they lightly caressed each other. Despite everything, it would seem that he did get some good advice from the old pervert. He wasn't sure when, but suddenly he looked forward to marrying Temari and spending his life with her. Maybe it wasn't what he thought would happen, but maybe dreams can change. After a bit of time, both were feeling a bit too hot, so Temari with some regret pulled away. "We better get out before we're boiled." "Okay Temari-chan," he said, smiling, not even noticing when he added in the honorific. Temari blushed a bit at being called that, but she had on a small pleased smile. "Come on, we'll go out and have ramen tonight. Naruto-kun." She smiled a bit more at calling him that. It somehow seemed right to call him that now. Naruto blinked in surprise at it, but soon he had a matching happy smile of his own on his face. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.